Thank you. I would have forgotten that.
Cover you from both sides because I'm pretty sure you'll talk to them.
Settings. Greg's on, except his picture's not there yet.
All right, grassroots, when you're ready, you can give me a countdown and I will be ready to roll.
There's Greg.
Welcome. Today is Wednesday, March the 23rd, 2022. This is a regular meeting of the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners. And we have a rather exciting opening today. We are giving Janice Voss Cadill a proclamation, and we are going to continue that item. We're going to present it to her on Wednesday, I believe April the 13th, at our next regular board meeting. So I'm going to bring forward Sheriff Joe DeSalvo. Joe, if you want to come up to the table. We are going to recognize and to honor Pickens County Emergency Manager Valerie McDonald for exceptional work and for an amazing award. And I know Valerie loves getting these things in public, so we are doing it truly to honor you and not to embarrass you, Valerie. So Joe, please.
So I'll just start off with some comments. First of all, thank you and good afternoon, everybody. And then I'm hoping the board will have some things to say about Valerie from your interactions with her. But as we know from our newspaper article, that Valerie was selected as the Northwest Region's Emergency Manager of the Year, which I think is a big deal. Because of Valerie, this community is truly prepared for a lot of things that most of us don't think about every day. A flood, a fire, a pandemic, and unfortunately, that's where Valerie spends her time thinking in worst-case scenarios and preparing this community for those. I think the proof of our success, or Valerie's success, is, in recent times, our pandemic response, although confusing as it was for the whole country in the beginning, I think we and Valerie brought some organization to some real confusion. I mean, looking back now, we have to remember how afraid we were in the first couple of months of that pandemic and what Valerie brought to us behind the scenes. Also, as a statewide responder, she's worked hard on the Boulder floods, Boulder fires, the Troublesome fire, the Lake Christine fire. All of that gives us experience for, God forbid, when that happens in Pickens County. We have an emergency manager who has been on some rather large statewide incidents. I feel comfortable that because of Valerie, that this community is really prepared for disasters. And I think that is important for comfort. But she is truly a behind-the-scenes worker whose dedication shows whenever a disaster comes this way. Her disaster mitigation is not only disaster mitigation is not only the responsibility of government, us, but in this case, it's a really big part of the citizenry, and the citizens have to be prepared. So part of this message is congratulations to Valerie, but don't look for her to solve all the problems. You need to mitigate your home from fire. You need to be prepared when we tell you to leave your home. You need to be prepared by getting Pitkin Alert and all the other alerts and listen to those alerts. So in this community, I don't really want everybody just to look for us for a solution. I think we need to work collaboratively when a disaster hits and what we're going to do. I think the Marshall Fire was probably one of the biggest events that we saw in this state as far as fire goes, where life could have been threatened, and miraculously nobody was hurt because they listened to early warning signs and got out of the way. And that's what I want to push more than anything in this. So I think you as a community member can help Valerie out by planning exit routes for your home, mitigating your home from wildfire. Know your evacuation routes, and please leave when you're told. Preparedness saves lives, and that's part of Valerie's job. And I'm very, very, very proud to have Valerie as part of my office. As I said, it's hard to imagine somebody sits in a 10 by 10 room all day long, and all they do is think about what the worst possible thing that could happen to Pickens County is and how do we prepare for it. Her work with the ESF leads, the emergency support functions. Those are 15 separate entities, all with under Valerie, that will do anything from house people in state of emergency, animals, anything community needs, all work under Valerie, and I really think this is an under-recognized role, especially considering the weight it brings. So I'd like to introduce Valerie and say thank you and congratulations.
So Valerie, would you like to say anything, or would you like the Board of Commissioners to go first?
Well, I'll talk for a minute,
Okay.
but I'll be very brief. And I just wanted to say it is quite an honor for me to receive this award from the Colorado Emergency Management Association. The award was for Northwest Region Emergency Manager of the Year. I truly appreciate the support and recognition. It starts at the top and trickles down, so it starts with the BOCC. Thank you to the Sheriff's Office as well. But that said, it's clearly, and I know you all know this, it's so much more than a one-person effort. I mean, we're so fortunate in this valley to work with such highly trained professional public safety agencies. I could sit in my office alone all day long and write really fabulous emergency preparedness plans that would not be worth the paper they're written on. Everything I do has full participation from the groups I've mentioned already, but the municipalities, the IMT, and our 15 emergency support function teams as well. Everything I do, I need their participation and their buy-in. And often it's more about the planning process than the actual plan that's created. So I'll stop there, and I would, of course, launch into my normal spiel about the public's role in all of this, but Joe, you covered that,
Good job,
very, very well. So I feel like I'm being heard. You know, in a full-on disaster emergency like we just saw happen in Boulder County, or in the summer during our high season or winter, there could be 50,000 people here, and there may be 400 public safety personnel. So we really need the public to be able to take quick action on their own by doing all those things that Joe mentioned. And there's also a wealth of information on pickenwildfire.com. So I'll stop there. Thank you all.
Kelly, please.
Yeah, I'll go. Gosh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well deserved. We're so proud of you and grateful to you. And, you know, I would say on the day of the Boulder fire, I'm talking to a friend in Westminster, and they're sort of watching which way the wind's going to blow and whether they have to evacuate. And she's like, you know, we don't think about things like go bags. And I'm like, oh, I feel like that's like common vernacular where we live in our community, and that's because of you and your constant reminders, and I think, you know, delicate pressure on everybody to be prepared. And,
Delicate pressure.
Delicate's the word.
No, sledgehammer, maybe.
and I would just say, you know, Valerie is so good at this and so good at having really experts on each of those ESF teams, the emergency support function teams. such that the elected officials team were very clear that our role is to not get involved and to stay out of the way and to let the experts take the charge. And I think that was always great advice, and to, you know, play our role communicating with the community as our most appropriate role in emergencies. So just the community should know that we stay out of the way. We let Valerie and her teams really run the show on all of this. And so thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Steve?
Yeah, I want to tell a story that will give a little insight into what Valerie's life is like. She and I were having a conversation where I had come up with some sort of insight. I had realized something about, you know, a disaster, something we need to be prepared for, and I thought, well, I should tell Valerie about it because it seemed, you know, it was an important thing to think about. So I described, and I don't even remember what it was now, but I described that to Valerie, and she said, "Welcome to my world." She's in her little room like you described, thinking about this stuff all the time. You had already thought long ago of the thing that I had this brilliant idea that we need to be ready for this, but she was already there, had that already figured out. So that just speaks highly of you thinking ahead, because the best thing to do in an emergency is if you've thought through what you're going to do in it ahead of time, no matter what the emergency is. You're more likely to take the right steps if you have the plan written down and figured out, and the lines of communication open, and all that stuff that you have already set up for us. So thank you. And the award was well deserved by you.
Thank you, and I remember the conversation.
Okay, what was the disaster?
I don't want to say.
Okay, Greg, did you want to say something? I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you, Patty. Yeah, Valerie, that's the big issue I have with you is, one, you're demure, you're so polite, you're so calm in the face of impending disaster that I think we all have a false sense of you know, safety here. And anyway, the point of that is, I think you do it so well that a lot of us haven't really noticed in the community. So it's so appropriate that you get this reward and that we sing your praises to the public, because I think we've had some hints about what you have to go through in your various reports to us, but yet you come across so calm, so demure, and I want to thank you for that, so that we're not all on edge, wondering when the next shoe will drop, because you're doing that for us. So I'm so glad to have you having our backs, and that you have already thought of a lot of the things that occur to us as we hear from the public, or as we live in our brush-choked neighborhoods, and so I am so grateful to have you here. And this is an extremely well-deserved award, and I'm hoping that you can write the book for other emergency managers and other communities someday, because you clearly know how to do this. And I'm always ears. I'm waiting to hear from you about what I can do to help. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. John, did you want to say some?
No, just thank you, Valerie. I know we've had the opportunity to work together on some shorter and longer events, and it's always been a great comfort to have you there and directing, you know, both the activities of the EOC and, you know, helping keeping us organized in these emergent situations. So thank you very much. Well deserved.
So before I give my remarks, I see there are some members of your team sitting behind you. Did anyone want to say anything? I'm giving you the opportunity, or just here to support Valerie, as always? Perfect. Okay, Valerie. So I've known Valerie for a long time. We've been through the thick and the thin of it. And I want the public to know that I know Valerie professionally really well. I've been on incidents with her. I've been in emergency ops centers with her. I've watched her in action, be it X Games or fires or whatever. She is amazing. But I've also had a very few moments, I wish there were more, of personal time, where Valerie and I have gotten together and just to talk, and not to talk about the next impending disaster or whatever, but just to be there and be friends. And she's amazing on all sides of her personality and her job and her unjob, which is very rare that she has that free time. And I encourage her to spend more time with me doing that because it's pretty fun. But she's amazing. She is calm under pressure. She does very patiently drive home to this community the need for being prepared. And I think the greatest point, it's not the county's total responsibility, that people have to take responsibility for themselves and their neighbors and their little communities, their homeowners or whatever, because this community is known for being there for each other. And Valerie really stresses that when she brings her points across about plan and this planning ahead of time, taking action when you're asked to take action and be ready to go. And the other thing is that it does take a team to get through these things and to prepare for them. You know, the tabletop exercises that Valerie puts together are amazing. And I think our ability to, having in the past, to use X Games as kind of a meet and greet, so to speak, so that there's faces to names. And so when a disaster, when the was to hit the fan, people are ready and they know who they're working with, and that's really a key part to successful emergency response. So Valerie, thank you. Thank you for all you do for this community. Thank you for being part of an amazing team. And we really do recognize that this award is more than well-deserved, and I'm really proud of the state for coming forward and acknowledging the amazing job that you do. So before you leave, for your little desk in that little room, please, on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I give you a hug?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say one last thing?
Of course you can.
I would not want anyone to hear this presentation and think, okay, Valerie's got it, Pitkin County's got it. This work is never ending, and we will continue to look for gaps in emergency preparedness and work to fill them. So I don't want anyone to sit back and relax. It's ongoing.
Say, Valerie's got it, we don't need to worry about it. No, it takes a team to get through these things, and it's an ongoing effort.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks for coming in. Thanks, guys. Wait, Greg has one more. Yes, Greg?
Valerie, before you take off, is there any particular message you want to share with the community regarding the upcoming summer season or anything like that? You know, this is a great chance to share the important message if you have one for us.
Well, it's even though it's coming up quickly, it's too soon to tell how the summer wildfire season will shake out. But based on what we've been seeing in recent years with climate change, we should expect the worst. May is Wildfire Community Preparedness Day. There will be a proclamation in front of the BOCC, and there's lots of activity planned around what the public needs to do to prepare for wildfire. I will leave it at that. If you want to get a head start on it, pickinwildfire.com will tell you how to create your evacuation and wildfire preparedness plan, doing things like you've all mentioned. You're signing up for Pickin' Alerts, know your evac routes, have your go bag. The list is extensive. It's easy to do in advance. During a fast-moving wildfire, it's almost impossible. So I'll end there, Greg. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Perfect. Thank you. Pickinwildfire.com.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, guys. We appreciate your being here in support of Valerie. Okay, we are going to move into additions and deletions to our agenda.
We already covered the one change we had in the agenda for Janice. Otherwise, there are no changes.
Okay, do we have to make a motion and vote to move Janice's proclamation? I don't think we do. Okay. All right, I am going to go to public comment. So this is an item on our agenda when the public has the opportunity to speak to items that are not on today's agenda. We provide 3 minutes for any member of the public to either be in the room and speak, or to Zoom in and speak, or to call in and speak. And I think that information is posted. So people, and I don't think we have anybody lined up for us. I'll give everybody a few minutes. Okay. Seeing no one calling in or in the room or zooming in, I'm going to close the public comment section and bring it to the Board of Commissioners for comments. Steve, please.
So a couple of comments. One, wildfire season is already in the western United States. I have two different friends, one in Montana, one in Texas, who are farmers. Both of their properties have been partially burned by wildfires already this year, big grass fires that are going on in the western United States. So we have a lot of snow here, but other parts, virtually the west of the 37th meridian, whatever that meridian is in drought condition right now, the whole western United States. We're lucky in western Colorado, we're a little bit better off here because we've had about normal snowfall levels. And my next thing, a different topic. We're coming up to Easter pretty soon, and I think before our next regular meeting, there will be Easter service at the Snowmass Chapel, and I'm singing with the choir there. This will be the first time since pre-pandemic that we've been able to do that in person, singing for the choir, getting the choir back together. And I am so excited; it makes me feel so good to sing. So wherever you are, go on Easter. Everybody have a terrific Easter coming up here in just a week and a half from now.
Thanks, Steve. I think it's fun. Steve always shares with us when he's performing outside of sitting at this table, of course. And I need to capture you in person and be in the audience for one of your events. So thanks for letting us know. Any other members of the board wishing to comment? Kelly, please.
Yeah, Steve preceded my comment. So I've just been thinking about, the fact that if you read in the headlines, just sort of how dangerously low Lake Powell is, and how significant water shortages are being discussed, and water usage cuts are being discussed. And this is kind of the time of year where folks are planting their gardens, planting their lawns, all that. And so I would just encourage people to think differently than they have in the past about what they might be doing this year, and get advice from all the excellent local master gardeners and nurseries that we have to maybe make some changes in your own practices about how we use water. Because even though we're right at the headwaters, we all kind of contribute to this larger ecosystem and watershed all the way down to Mexico. And so we are not, I think, free from any of those restrictions and potential drought measures. And so now's the time to be thinking about that.
All right, thanks. Greg, did you have any comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, and just for the public's information, Greg is zooming in today's meeting. I have Steve and Kelly are in the room present up front in person. County staff that's here. And Francie is out of the country, and I think she's zooming into the Wolf meeting from, hopefully from a nice sunny beach somewhere, and we're all very envious of her taking a little time off, so we appreciate that. She did join our meeting yesterday, and we appreciated her taking the time to do so. So my public comments are just, again, now things are maybe not as icy, but they're definitely muddy. So we are entering into our mud season, which I think is exciting. Down Valley, you'll see iris coming up. You'll see daffodils and tulips and lilac bushes starting to get buds on them, which is really exciting. In my yard, I see snow. I live up valley, and I love seeing that snow because that means there's water going into the earth and into our rivers and our streams, and that is very important, not only for our environment and our wildlife habitat issues, but for people who are economically, dependent upon our rivers and our streams. And also, it really helps us in thinking about wildfire. But that doesn't mean that wildfires won't happen. It means, again, as Kelly and Steve, we cannot stress it enough. We always need to be prepared for that. And the human cause of wildfires is, at the top of the list. So it's really up to us as the people who live in this valley to help forest fires and wildfires, grass fires, you name it. We need to be prepared for any and all. So I'm going to move on to the rest of our agenda for today. And thanks everyone for joining us. So the next item on our agenda is the consent items. This is a single reading. We have the minutes of our March 9th regular meeting. And we have a resolution to appoint citizen board members. And we are appointing, I believe we're appointing Graham Means to our District 1 position on our Open Space and Trails Board. He is a returning, very active, very knowledgeable gentleman, and we are really appreciative of his time and of his willingness to continue on the Open Space and Trails Board. So are there any comments, or does the board want to pull either one of these items off the agenda? Steve?
Well, I would like to thank Graham also for his service, and thanks for wanting to continue on the Open Space and Trails Board. He's contributed a lot to it, and we were very happy to reappoint him. So I would like to make a motion to approve both items on the consent agenda.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Steve, a second from Kelly. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion moves on 4-0 with Francie not being in attendance. Next item on our agenda, and I'm hoping we have Jeanette Jones. Are you going to do this? Or is she here?
We're gonna tag
Oh,
team.
there's Jeanette. Okay, I've invited Jeanette and Rich to explain briefly to the board. We are coming up with a new process for consent items related to Pickens County leases. It's hopefully to make this process still available for public comment.
on
Yeah,
Zoom.
and so I'm going to let Jeanette and Rich kind of give a brief explanation so the board and the public is understanding of this new process we're adding to our agendas. So Jeanette, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Yeah, just a brief overview of this matter. I'm sorry, Jeanette Jones, I work in the county manager's office. As per the Home Rule Charter, a multitude of housing leases, including housing fund leases, airport leases, Phillips leases, and several others that ABSHA is no longer contracted for, are required to come to the board and the commissioners for approval via an ordinance and mandated 2 readings with a public hearing. Additionally, there'll be more to come from my understanding, and I think there is I know there's an acquisition on your agenda today for another housing unit, so that will generate a lease. These leases have random expiration dates, and staff has worked with the attorney's office on creating templates for all leases, which have standard language and provisions written in them for consistency. So almost all the leases that come to you are boilerplate language that's been approved by the attorney's office. The only exception to that is if someone has a pet, there might be a little bit of change in the deposit. But that's probably pretty much the only exception. Therefore, every time the board sees these leases, they are the same, with only the name of the leasee and the term that is different. Because all these leases are written the same and to save staff time and commissioners' time and your agenda time, we thought it would be worthy to add a line to the consent actions agenda to accommodate action on these housing leases. And Rich and John Peacock and John Ely have all been involved in this, and we have their recommendation to do this, but we wanted to give you an overview of why we think it's worthy, and it'll definitely save a lot of staff time. And with that, I'll let Rich, I think he is going to talk to you about how we're going to maybe propose to handle second readings. And then if you have any questions for me, or I'm sure Rich too, we'll be happy to answer.
Great. Thank you, Jeanette. And thank you for working on this so diligently. I think the board's going to appreciate this new consent item process.
Yeah, thank you, Board. Rich Engelhardt, Deputy County Manager. as Jeanette had mentioned, in working with John Ely and the attorney's office, there's the opportunity to put these on for second reading on consent as well. So we wanted to run that by this board and see if that's something you would like to do. I think it'd be staff's recommendation to do that because, as Jeanette's mentioned, these are really pretty straightforward. I mean, if there would be any major change to it, we wouldn't suggest, or staff would not put it on consent. We would want to bring that forward for further discussion. But just want to get the board's feel for a second reading on consent.
Steve, go ahead.
I think that at the second reading for the public's benefit, I think we should actually explain, not have it on a consent item, but actually explain each item. And we can explain that this is a very simple thing. We can't change the language of it. It's just like in this case, a lease agreement. But for the public's benefit, that's really the only way they would know what, if they're watching and didn't read the packet, they wouldn't know what it is we're necessarily approving. So I think for the second reading, I would leave it that we look at each one individually and explain it to the public.
Yeah, it was my understanding we had to vote on them each individually, so.
Well, I believe they're listed individually,
So
but
they'd
if
be
it's
on
a
a consent?
consent, it goes as part of the packet.
And could we also then, that would also have public comment because it was a second reading, so if there were any members of the public? I'm looking at John Ely, I think you are too.
Yeah, I'm wondering from a public comment standpoint.
The charter requires the action accompanying the leases to be by ordinance, and the ordinance, of course, has certain requirements that are associated with it. For example, the public hearing that you just mentioned, Patty. However, the charter does not require how the agenda for actions is organized. So you can put those together as a series under the consent agenda, just like there is a series of action items today under consent agenda. They would all be listed individually and described by the potential lessee, as well as the location of the unit. And then, of course, the packet would include the lease itself. If anybody is interested as to the term of the lease or the rental amount or anything like that, that would be available linking through the agenda item on the county's webpage. The idea then would be that the public hearing needs to take place, but a public hearing can be open for all items on the consent agenda at one time. And if there are no comments, then the board could proceed with adoption of the consent agenda with one motion and one vote. If there was anybody who was commenting on any one of the singular items, that could simply be pulled off the consent agenda, and those comments or questions would be entertained and then an action taken on that specific item. But the board can set up their agenda for review and determination of actions to be taken any way you feel is appropriate. So whatever you think is most informative to the public, is best serving of the public, that's the way we should proceed.
Okay. So my concern is, for Steve too, is that the public have an opportunity to comment if they choose to, and that the board could pull any one of them off for explanation or whatever at that time, rather than have to list them and go through them individually. It's a special section just reserved for leases. Mm-hmm. So we could always have staff just give a broad overview at the beginning of our discussion. I think that'll address
So
your concerns, maybe?
That could work, and then ask if the public has, if
Right.
any members of the public have comments about any of these items,
Right.
whether it's 1, 2, 3, however many, might only be one item.
We can pull
And
it
if
off.
nobody does, then we could approve the whole
Right.
bunch of them at once.
And if a board member had comments about one specific lease, we can pull that off and deal with it individually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kelly?
Yeah, I guess the way I'm reading this is that there will be a public hearing on these in their second reading on the consent agenda.
How it was first proposed was that it would go off consent and then into the second reading section. But now it appears, per the county attorney, we can leave it under consent and open it up as a consent public hearing.
Okay, yeah, that's how it's showing here.
Yeah.
So that's how
Yeah,
I'm thinking that we'll deal with that. Okay.
but this will keep it in its own consent items section,
Yeah, that's fine.
is my understanding. Is the board clear on that? I just wanted the board to have an explanation to discuss it because it's a new process. And if we find it doesn't work, or we find we need to tweak it, we can do so in the future. Correct? So, the board's good with that? Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you, Rich.
And one other
Yeah.
comment. I remember my dad used to claim when he was commissioner that he would read every word of every packet. But we do have a lot of boilerplate stuff that is always the same language. And I maybe read it one time 8 years ago. I don't read all that boilerplate stuff anymore because
Right.
it is what it is. You're not gonna find any mistakes in it because it's always correct.
And if staff changes the boilerplate, they bring that back to us and point that out. So they're not just sliding in changes and we're just consent approving them. They bring them back and point out, now these leases have been changed to include X, Y, or Z. So that'll always come to us as part of the process. That good?
Yep.
But
So-
see, we want you reading every word in every packet.
And I won't call for the reading word for word of the.
Thank you, we truly appreciate that, I'm sure the public does too. Okay, so I'm gonna move forward to our agenda item, which is consent items, first reading, set for second reading and public hearing under consent items on April 13th, 2022. So we have under these consent items, an ordinance of Board of Commissioners for authorizing individual lease agreements with Ricardo Ledesma and Sophia Gonzalez for county-owned housing fund unit, and an ordinance authorizing individual lease agreements with Rennie Driggs for a housing fund unit. So those are the two items we have on this consent. Does the board have any questions or concerns about these two items? If not, can I have a motion to move it on to second reading?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second?
I have a first in 2 seconds. That's pretty good. So I'm going to call the question unless there's further comment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, great. Thank you. Thanks.
you.
All right, Jeanette, thank you. So next on our agenda is an individual consideration item. First reading set for public hearing on April 13, 2022. It's an ordinance of the Board of Commissioners authorizing acquisition of a portion of the Vaughn parcel. And I have Open Space and Trails staff, Dale Will, here to present this item to us. Thank you, Dale. And I bet you have a map.
I believe we
I like your
do.
snaps, Dale.
Thank you.
He dressed up for our meeting today. He actually asked me
Dressed
if
up
I wanted
snappy.
him to come to the meeting, and I
Okay.
said we would love to see his smiling face.
Thanks, Patty. It's nice to see everyone in person.
Thank you for
at
being here,
the
Dale.
Vaughn parcel. And this is our first proposed open space and trails acquisition contract of the year. And as you're aware, we're working on several things, but this one is going to be first out of the gate this year. What this is, we've got a map up. There's a larger parcel that sits in Snowmass Canyon just below the Conoco Bridge. And the open space program in Pitkin County have actually been involved off and on with this parcel a few times since the open space program started, way back in 1993 when the program was just getting off the ground. The then Open Space Board decided to build the Basalt Old Snowmass Trail. This was before the Rio Grande right-of-way had been divested by the railroad company, and as part of that project they acquired an easement to come through this property, as well as a trailhead that's now known as the Arciero Trailhead. And you can see on this map that's located down on the slice of this parcel that sits between the Rio Grande right-of-way and the Roaring Fork River. At that time, we also acquired a fishing easement along the riverfront there. And over the years, the program started acquiring a lot of other things in that area. It's a very wildlife-rich part of Snowmass Canyon. Specifically, we've got significant open spaces on each side of the parcel now. The Wheatley open space sits upstream, is open space property with both agricultural and recreational and habitat values. And similarly, on the downstream side of this property, we have the Lazy Glen open space. The current owner approached us and suggested maybe we'd be better able to manage this portion of the parcel that sits uphill of the Rio Grande right-of-way, approximately 35 acres. And I've labeled it on this map. It's a little difficult to read with the font is camouflaged in the pinyon juniper up there, but it's essentially this area that's outlined in yellow, and it's probably not developable, although these days people get pretty frisky trying to push those things. So one of the things that would be accomplished by this purchase would be we would forever eliminate the potential nuisance of an attempt to develop up on that hillside. Anyone that knows Snowmass Canyon, I know Steve knows this property pretty well, knows that that's pretty steep and dry up there. The owner has offered it to the county at a almost nominal amount, given that the development on the property sits on the opposite side of the Rio Grande right-of-way down on the river. There's a large home here. $57,500 is the proposal. The Open Space Board is unanimously recommending we accept that. The landowner has signed a contract, and I've signed the provision in the contract agreeing that I'll recommend this to you. In addition to the habitat and scenic values on the property, it does have a historic irrigation flume that runs across. You can see in this aerial photograph here, back in the day, the ditches that irrigate what's now the Lazy Glen open space were diverted out of the Roaring Fork River somewhere up on the Wheatley open space, or perhaps above that, and the water was carried down here in a wooden flume. It's not quite as elegant as the hanging flume down on the Dolores River, but it's still pretty cool. And in your packet, I included a historic photograph of a steam train sitting right there with that flume pretty visible above it. The condition of this contract that will bring this back in front of you, assuming that you agree to approve the contract, will be a subdivision exemption plat to formally sever this 35 acres from the balance of the parcel. And that's something that the open space program has done in other situations where we want to acquire a portion of someone's parcel that will become an open space property because there would be no development on it. It qualifies for that exemption. So we will be back to formalize that before the closing. And with that, I commend this to you and recommend and carry forward the recommendation of the Open Space Board that you approve this contract for purchase of this 35 acres.
Are there any questions or comments from the board? Steve, please.
Well, since it connects the two different open space parcels, would you call this the Vaughn open space, or would it be part of the Lazy Glen open space, or have you thought about that at this point?
And frankly, it's not my decision to make, but way back 23 years ago when Patty hired me to work on these things, we'd always name the parcel by whoever sold it to us. But in more recent times, we've begun to name things a little bit more carefully in regard to the landscape or the original homesteader, which is how we ended up with Wheatley open space on one side and Lazy Glen on the other side. I am assuming that this property will essentially be absorbed into one of those open spaces or the other. It may prompt the question of whether we want to rename the whole assemblage under one name, like we did with the Roaring Fork Gorge down here that starts at Jaffe Park and it comes all the way up to Stein Park. But that'll be a decision to be made at a future date.
Well, then the thought crosses my mind. I'm not sure the name of the water right in the ditch, but perhaps it could be named that name. whatever it is.
Sure, we can look at that, and yeah, that ditch, I believe the diversion point is now further down, but it does have the flume, so that's a good idea.
Yeah, and that's the way I remember it in the photograph. I love that picture.
Right.
So Kelly, did you have a comment?
Yeah, a question really, as well. Do we gain any water rights through this acquisition?
No, the water that used to flow through that flume, we actually already own it, and it's now down at the Lazy Glen open space.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. No, this is incredibly generous and a steal, really,
It's a
for
perfect
us.
spot, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question though about this great picture with the train.
Mm-hmm.
So if the train had to back, how far down did the train have to back before it could turn around? Because if it didn't come to Aspen and turn around, which is probably right over here behind us, where the Rio Grande Park is, that's where the trains would generally turn around if they didn't go up to the mine. So that's, because that could be a long way to back up.
Right. What Patty's referring to, a photograph that's in the packet, if anyone wants to see it, and the trains were backing down the valley with some freight cars attached to the front of the locomotive. I assume that was in the years when they went up as far as Woody Creek and came
And
back from Woody Creek, so
yeah.
they didn't have a turnaround. They might have had to go all the way to the Y in Glenwood Springs
Yeah.
and do a 3-point turn down there.
I know, it's just it's a great photograph. I think it's, you can see the flume really well. And I'm very familiar with the parcel, and especially with the fishing easement that is pretty significant along that stretch of the river. And I'm really, really happy to see that. So, yeah, I think this is a great opportunity. We need to thank the current owner greatly for finally working this out after 23 years.
Right.
But Greg, did you have any comment?
No, other than that, I support it, and it's great to hear the background and know the history, and it's good to see this happen. Thank you.
So I will be seeking a motion to approve and move to public hearing and second reading on April the 13th.
I will so move.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Steve and a second from Kelly. Steve, please.
And a question. I presume that's the power line right-of-way that's clear,
Right.
the clear-cut area going across the middle there.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any possibilities to create a public trail going from Wheatley to the Lazy Glen using that right-of-way under the power line? Sort of like the trail's already clear-cut. I don't know if people would want to hike under a power line, but it's a thought anyhow.
It's pretty steep up there. I've been up there, and there's also a lot of cactus up there. But those are questions that the open space environmental planners can look at probably during a revision of the or an update for the Wheatley Open Space Management Plan or the Lazy Glen Open Space Management Plan. It certainly would lend itself to that, and that those power right-of-ways, there's actually two of them that sit on top of each other. The Kinder Morgan gas line is underground there, and the Holy Cross transmission line is above ground. And there's other little game trails and things that run across there. So we could certainly look at that possibility.
Or maybe there's another route that would be just like a single track kind of thing that would be to look at.
Right. Now both of those, both Wheatley Gulch and Beone Gulch, are places where we're not trying to encourage a lot of human activity. So that would be up to the open space department and all of you to think about management into the future, but it would lend itself to that if that were seen as a desirable thing to do.
Do we have any hunting issues? Because I know that hunters pull off up valley from this parcel, more towards where the railroad cars are, when it's not smelled, the Durbaz Way comes up.
Yeah, that's right, clear up at
Whatever that intersection is, because you usually see their little 4x4s parked there, and
right. I'm not aware that they are going in and out of Wheatley Gulch
Okay.
or Beone Gulch.
might be
It's
too steep.
pretty rough to
Yeah.
carry anything out of either one of those places.
Okay, I've just noticed them there. They may just be rendezvousing there and moving on to other spaces, but yeah, because we don't really allow hunting, especially under special permit on open space.
Right.
So, okay, so I have a motion, I have a second. Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thanks, Dale.
Thank you.
All right, now, the next item on our agenda is the, I'm gonna get my records here in front of me, is an emergent, Board of County Commissioners, we have to convene as the ambulance district. And, because we are the board for the ambulance, Aspen Ambulance District. And this is an ordinance of the board approving on behalf of the board of the ambulance district an agreement with Aspen Valley Hospital District to buy out the ground lease and conveyance of the ambulance facility. So Rich, please.
Well, do I start now, or do you?
We already
Go
convened.
into-
I can
you
just
have
convene the
convened,
meeting. I
huh?
just have to call
All
for motion
righty.
to adjourn.
Okay. Good, thank you.
We are currently convened as the Aspen Ambulance.
Here, you want me to, you want us to like spin around in our
Yeah,
chair?
switch it, that helps,
Okay,
thank you, now I
okay.
got it.
New board.
It's a new
Switcho,
hat.
changeo, yeah.
Great, thank
Put
you
on
very
our-
much.
Yeah, our
Yeah.
ventilators, and we're ready to go.
Great, thank you, Board. Rich Engelhardt,
Put on
Deputy.
another hat.
Hey, there you go. That's perfect. Now I know, I've got my cue.
No.
Rich Engelhardt, Deputy County Manager. And I've got Steve Selby here with us today. We've had the opportunity to work together on a number of projects. And before we get into this, I just want to say what an honor it is to be a partner in these projects with the hospital. You know, the relationship that John and the CEO, Dave Ressler, have forged is just simply amazing. And I think it was experienced greatly with COVID, how those two worked through all those issues together. And Steve and I get the opportunity to kind of pull things together to bring to the board after those two have done a lot of the behind-the-scenes work on these. So we're here to represent kind of a lot of time that's been spent, and I'm sure John might want to chime in here, talking about the what we're going to do with the old ambulance building. I know, Patty, you love calling it the barn.
It's the barn.
But I think we're in a position now to present this to the Ambulance District Board and an opportunity. And then John Ely could maybe even explain a little bit about why we're doing this through the board rather than through the BOCC and kind of his findings. He worked with the hospital attorney on working through this arrangement. So just briefly, what we're looking at today, and a little bit of history. Back in 1995, the board entered into an agreement with the Aspen Valley Hospital for a term of 50 years on the ground lease that's supposed to expire in 2045. So in essence, there's 23 years remaining on that lease. And so part of this proposal was to buy out, the hospital wanted to buy out the remaining years on that lease, and we needed to set a value associated with that. So in your packet, you see that there's a $16.59 market rate rent per square foot. And that was really derived from our communications center relationship that we have with the fire district. That we lease space from the fire district for that center. So that was the starting point for negotiations for John and Dave to begin with. And I think they both agreed that it made sense. It's a relationship that's similar. They're entities that deal with public safety, so it seemed to make a great comparison for that. We had to go in then and kind of do some corrections to the overall price. So that got us a value. There's some deferred maintenance that Steve's certainly aware of over time. The roof is in pretty bad shape. There's some siding. It's a worn out building. Knowing that, the board authorized us to build a new ambulance building because we just knew it wasn't going to sustain itself for quite some time. So we ended up discounting it for some deferred maintenance that needed to be done there. And then also in the septic and sewer replacement, there's whenever some of the work was done on that back road, Steve might be able to talk this a little bit better, but there was a kind of the line was severed that held to the drain, I guess the wastewater drain. And so any vehicles that were cleaned off in there, the ambulance district had to go in and pump that out on a regular basis. So that does not function very well. So depending on what their use is in the future, that's going to have to be addressed. Also, when we had looked at it from different perspectives, there's a lack of parking and ADA accessibility, and there's no elevator in the building. So those are things that the hospital's going to have to address whenever they start down that path of renovating that building. So we discounted that, and then just recently the gutter fell off along the edge.
Perfect
So
timing.
we called Steve and said, "You want us to fix it, or do you want us just to discount our price?" Because we had it bid out, and he says, "I just discount it." I said, "All right." So that's that additional $6,500. So in essence, it came up with a net price of $528,733. And so that is what we're going to receive in compensation for that lease term from the board. So I'll turn it over to John for any historical comments too, and then certainly if you have questions of us, Steve's here to answer those. So.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. I think you did a really nice job, Steve. Thanks for being here. This is no doubt an unusual deal. This is one of the kind of historic, I think, it was almost a handshake agreement. It took us quite a while, I think even a couple of years to put all the records straight on who built what and paid for what and that sort of thing. So this has been a ongoing conversation. We think this is fair for several reasons. You know, we don't own the land. We don't, you know, the building is really on a lease term to go back. So it I think is a good arrangement. I'd also note they believe the hospital's intended use for the facility is around housing and such for physicians that need to spend the night and such there. It's more of a temporary housing that will
we
open.
intend to create about a dozen call rooms.
Yeah.
So for physicians and nurses that need to be on site or close to the hospital that may live out of town. So they would come and stay overnight, a few nights while they're on call, and then they would have immediate access to the hospital. And there's no parking need. They'd already be parked in our parking garage, so it is an ideal use for us.
That will open up some of the hospital's units that are more appropriate for longer term housing. So we felt like it corresponded with, frankly, a goal of ours in providing more affordable housing in the community, supporting a critical service. So we saw a win-win here, and so hope you will see it the same.
Okay, and John Ely, did you want to give us a brief explanation as to why we convened as the Ambulance District Board rather than stayed on just as the Board of County Commissioners?
Well, the board, as constituted as county commissioners, is also in that composition the ambulance board of directors. So with a quick change of hats that Steve, executed, we're ready to go in a different capacity. The unique aspect of this is that the action was original action that Jeanette found in the records for me was taken by the BOCC on behalf of the Aspen Ambulance District through an ordinance of the BOCC. So in the original action constructed that way, we are following a general construct in law that if you want to undo something, you back out of it the same way you got into it. So we're implementing the exact same process and procedure that was done originally to execute the lease, now to back out of the lease and to relinquish any further rights to that leasehold in exchange for a cash buyout from the hospital district.
Okay, thank you. And it would be then my understanding that this cash buyout, this $500 and some odd would go into the ambulance district pot of money, not to the BOCC general fund, county general fund.
Well, this is another kind of interesting conversation, Pay. So it will eventually make its way, I believe, back into the capital fund, and that is in compensation. The ambulance district actually built their facility on property that was going to be available for expansion of the Schultz building. And so we will apply that elsewhere as the board sees fit.
So that's a further discussion item.
Yeah.
I'm taking it because I have some ideas as to how that we might be a benefit to the funding issues that are currently existing for the ambulance district.
And that's also an option for the board. We do have some ongoing general fund support right now anticipated, so that'd be another way of
So it
looking at it.
sounds like it's a good win-win all the way around.
Yeah.
And I was at Aspen Valley Hospital as an employee when the ambulance crews used to sleep in a closet on cots
Really?
over by the garage, which was not a very pleasant place. And the on-call doctors would take up a hospital bed, in a private room, and they would literally move in there for like days at a time. So this is a nice
currently
addition.
utilizing a couple of our future patient rooms for doctor sleep rooms, and we have a couple closets that we put people in. So this will be a
So a
huge
lot of things
improvement.
haven't changed since I was there. But yeah, I do remember that when you needed to find a guy from the ambulance crew, you had to like walk through them, God only knows where to find them in their closet. But so I appreciate this. I know there's been a lot of public discussion as to the use of this facility, the barn, and now we have a new barn because the buses now fit into the new barn. So I'm excited about that. So I'd like to bring this back to the board to see if the board has any comments or questions. Kelly,
I
please.
was just hoping for a little clarification. So, is the ground lease just under the footprint of the building itself? Or is it
Go
like,
ahead.
is it associated with like a parcel line or a building footprint?
This has been a complicated one, Kelly, so I don't think it's actually designated as a separate parcel, but the line, the land lease is larger than the building.
Okay.
But it's on property that's fully owned by the
So like,
hospital
they're
district.
taking over like the wall and the fencing and the sidewalk and all that? Okay.
Because I know they used part of that for a tent to house one of their vehicles in, so it was kind of this morphing lot position, so.
Yeah,
good
there's a
question.
polygon there that doesn't really go even to the property lines. That is our designated lease area. But
Okay.
it doesn't match the building either.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the squiggly line on the map thing.
Yeah.
It's a squiggly line on a map thing,
A
yeah.
moving target squiggly line.
Well, I'll say, when I had my first child, our midwife drove up during a coming snowstorm, a moving in snowstorm, and stayed overnight and was able to deliver our child. So I was super grateful that she was able to stay. And I know that better facilities probably would create better opportunities for that to happen for other patients at the hospital. So.
Yeah, I was on call for the recovery room first for VBACs, and so I spent a lot of nights trying to find a place to sleep, and then being woken up in the morning saying, "You could have gone home 4 hours ago. She delivered," and I'm like, "Thanks." Anyway, yeah, lots of good memories. Steve, did you have any questions?
Yeah, my question would have to do with actually the Schultz building, and I presume that land is owned by the hospital that it sits on, is that correct? And do we have a land lease for that also, or what is?
No, that's a whole different arrangement. And I would love to have been in the room when this was happening between the hospital district and the county. But in that case, we have a perpetual easement, and that is designated as a separate parcel. So we have a perpetual easement that gives us development rights, but it also specifies uses, general uses around human services and health. And so when we talk to the hospital district as the ambulance district, we felt that the ambulance service fell within the health portion of that perpetual easement, which is how we reached agreement there. And we are really eyeing, as the board has already approved, more looking at mid-valley services with a flexible space at 123 Emma Road versus expansion at the Schultz building. So that it all came together fairly nicely.
And is the Schultz parcel in the city, or does it remain in the county?
It's in the city.
Because I was going to say, it would really be an island in there with everything that's around it. Okay,
we
now that we've
annex that
solved the
into the
problems
county?
of the world.
Well,
Craig, did you have any comments?
No, but it seems like it might be time to make a motion.
I will take a motion.
If it is, I'd make a motion that we approve the agreement with Aspen Valley Hospital District to buy out the ground lease and conveyance of the ambulance facility on behalf of the Board of Aspen Ambulance District.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Greg and a second by Steve. Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very
Motion passes 4-0, and we'll see you back on the 13th. And I need a motion now to adjourn as the Ambulance District Board.
So moved.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. I'm taking them both. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So we are now reconvened after our regular meeting as the Board of County Commissioners. And the next item on our agenda, thank you, Board, for moving us along, is a resolution of the Board of Commissioners providing supplemental appropriations to the 2022 budget and amending the 2022 budget for 2021 carryover projects. And this is under our individual consideration items, first readings, set for public hearings on April the 13th. Connie, hi.
Good
So we were a
afternoon.
little confused in reading this. We thought you were on our agenda item duplicated twice, but it's two different provisions.
Two different items, yes. We'll start with first reading of budget carry-forwards. We prepare a resolution every year for budget carry-forwards. And in the agenda item summary, it gives some examples of what's included in the resolution and the guidelines that we follow. By state statute, if we are entering into a contract, we must have the full amount of that contract appropriated in the budget. When there are multi-year projects, that means that we appropriate the full amount of the project, even though we know we won't spend it all in the year that we're doing, in that first year, that it would continue on into the second year. There's always a need to carry forward what's left in the budget for these larger projects into the following year. I've given a couple examples here that are included in this resolution. There's the Jail Safety Improvement Project that's going on right now and should be concluded in 2022. And then the first feasibility phase of the Energy Challenge Grant for the microgrid is another multi-year project that's being carried forward in the resolution. In addition to the multi-year projects, there are also one-time projects that for one reason or another the timing is changed. For example, the Emma Access Road to the Whitewater Park was budgeted in 2021, but it was not begun that year, and it will happen in 2022. Or decommissioning of Lower Red Mountain Translator Site is another example. Then there are also replacement schedule items. When we prepare the budget, departments do a 10-year replacement schedule, so they're planning out when they think different items need to be replaced. And this can be anything from a cooking range at the senior center for their nutrition program to jail equipment or sheriff's rifles, and or also vehicles. And so it's planned out, but then the timing may change as we go through the years if they think something can be pushed off another year. And if it wasn't rebudgeted in the next year, then they have the option of carrying that forward. So an example is a heavy equipment room in the Road and Bridge Department. At the airport, equipment that clears the runway of debris. So there are a number of different items that are proposed to be carried forward similar to this. There are also dedicated revenues received in the year in 2021. For example, Friends of the Library donations. The donations were received, then we appropriate them through the budget carry-forward resolution so that that money can be spent for its intended purpose in the following year. Most of these are indicated by an asterisk in the resolution. So a number of different items. Let me just share my screen. If you're looking through the resolution, we have a number of different columns, but the revenue change and the expenditure change are the amounts that will be carried forward. So those are what you're looking for in the resolution. The other columns are just to give context and a bigger picture of the different items. So showing what was in the 2021 budget, if anything has been rebudgeted in 2022, and then what the final revised 2022 budget will be. There are a number of different grants that are included in the resolution, the hazard mitigation grant in emergency management, the energy challenge grant, and many others. Some of the larger dollar amounts that are included are $1.13 million for the jail safety improvement project. There is a total of $809,000 in the road and bridge fund for bridge and road maintenance and repair projects. $775,000 for various open space and trails projects that are ongoing, and $500,000 for the Motherlode Mercantile and Household Hazardous Waste Building at the Solid Waste Center. So those are just a few examples of what's included in the resolution. The total change in budget is a little over $6.5 million increase to expenditures. Again, these are items that were all approved and appropriated in the 2021 budget, and the savings that were not spent are carried over into the following year. There's also an increase in revenue of $228,000. And so this is a net increase to the 2022 budget of $6.3 million. Are there questions on any of the different items that are being carried forward or anything else in this resolution?
Greg, do you have any questions? Where's Greg? There's
Sorry, I don't.
Okay, Connie, thank you. So if there's no questions, and we're going to be moving this to a second reading public hearing on April the 13th, I'm looking for a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
I have a motion from Kelly
Second?
and a second from Steve. Seeing no further questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Connie.
I,
So next item on our agenda is, these are individual consideration items. These are public hearings and second readings. I'm going to open the public hearing process at this time. The first item is a resolution of the board providing supplemental appropriations of the 2022 budget and amending the 2022 budget first quarter. So if you can just briefly explain the difference between this one and the last item, that would be great.
So these are brand new requests. The carry forwards are projects that the board has already heard about in past budget processes. They're not new projects. Whereas the first quarter supplemental requests, most of them are new. And there are a number of different items that are included here. One is a term-limited 2-year position in community development for a plans reviewer, and this would be a position that is helping the department with succession planning. There's no cost in 2022 because there are enough savings in the timing of when positions are being filled that they don't need to appropriate more budget in 2022, but there will be a cost in 2023 and then half of 2024. The second item is the Maroon Bells Comprehensive Recreation Management Plan, which is not a new item. It was already included in the 2022 budget. However, we are now using the county as the pass-through agency for contributions from RAFTA, City of Aspen, Aspen Skiing Company, and the Chamber Resort Association. So we need to recognize that revenue which will be flowing through the county and then the expenditure going out. There's a request for the replacement of 2 dispatch consoles. And then there's a BOCC donation to the Aspen International Mountain Foundation.
Can I ask a question about that real quick?
Yes.
So now our total donation or whatever to them is $35,000? So I know that the board approved 25, but it's coming up as we budget So can you clarify for that? Because
Yeah,
I thought we were,
The donation is 25,000. It goes into the BOCC's discretionary line item, which already has 10,000 in it. The 10,000 is at the board's direction, and I don't think that has been determined yet.
okay, so we're leaving our discretionary fund open, so, okay, just wanted to clarify, because I was wondering if I missed something. Okay, thank you.
Then in the capital fund, the cost for the courts to be relocated in the Armory building, both the lease and some small remodel costs. In the Human Services Fund, a 6-hour per week FTE increase for the kitchen assistant, and this is to aid them in recruiting for that position, which has been difficult. Also, a 1-year retainer for Nan Sundin. There are some adjustments to the detox budget so that the budget will align with the new 2022 IGA. And then in the Open Space and Trails Fund, park dedication fees for Redstone Park, using $250,000 of the park dedication fee balance for the Redstone Park renovation project. In the Housing Fund, the request is to replenish the housing acquisition program and also the deed restricted program, using in part revenues from the sale of some assets. In the Healthy Rivers Fund, there is a budget increase and carry forward for the Whitewater Park streamside improvements and the use of $350,000 in park dedication fees towards this project. Then in the Airport Fund, there are 5 different requests for legal services, carpet cleaner, professional development services, security backflow preventer, and a pressure washer purchase and installation. The last request is the largest of all of the first quarter supplementals, and it's the DOLA microgrid grant. The project is a total of $3.5 million, and the budgetary changes are the different parts of the grant project, including a contingency and an owner's representative, then recognition of the DOLA grant, contributions from the airport, RAFTA, Holy Cross Energy, and then the general fund contribution, which at the moment is slated at $872,500. So a fairly large array of first quarter supplemental requests. The total appropriation for expenditures is a little over $11 million. But then the revenue change is over $6.7 million. So the net change to budget is $4,340,997.
Okay. That's a big one. So any questions or comments from the board?
Has anything changed from first reading?
That's my usual question.
I know, I beat you to it.
You beat me to it. It
That's
even
Patty's
says changes on here. Any changes or? So this is a public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item, please either call in or raise your hand. Star 9 and star 6 to unmute, correct? I'm getting there. We see that Dan Bartholomew is watching us carefully to make sure we're giving him all that money, which I think we are, Dan, just so you know. Okay. Seeing no comments, I'm going to keep the public hearing open for the rest of our items and bring it back to the board for comments, questions, or a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution providing supplemental appropriations to the 2022 budget and amending the 2022 budget.
I'll second that.
I have a motion from Steve, a second from Greg. Not seeing any further questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, Connie.
Thank you.
You have nothing else on our agenda today?
Nothing else.
It's always good to see you. Thank you for being here. So the next item is a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners authorizing acceptance of the State of Colorado Department of Local Affairs, or DOLA, Renewable and Clean Energy Initiative for Phase 1A of the AABC Integrated Clean Energy Microgrid Project. And I think Rich is going to be presenting.
Yes. Talk
on
about
behalf
different
of
hats.
Kara. Yeah.
I had Jody's hat on earlier, and I've got Kara's on
You
today.
got to spin around in the chair like
Spin
Kelly
around,
did.
Is everyone on vacation? I hope they are. No.
Kara was
so-
here yesterday. I saw her.
Yes, this is board, it's just is a second reading on the acceptance of the DOLA grant. And there was a change from the first time that we were in front of you, and you just took care of it with appropriation of the additional dollars to meet the grant requirements that we had. You may recall we had asked for a much larger grant at the time, and were awarded a little less, but at the same time, it increased our match value. So we ended up doing that, came to the board. You guys fully believe in this microgrid project and wanted it to go forward fully funded. So we appreciate you stepping up and doing that. So those were the only changes. So this really is just the acceptance of that DOLA grant for this Renewable and Clean Energy Initiative Phase 1A.
Well, I'm going to put you or John on the spot. Could you give a very brief explanation to the public what the microgrid project is? I think we need to, every time we bring it to the board, explain that, because we want to make sure the community understands what we're doing with these dollars.
Sure. You want me to go? Oh, you guys, no, not it? Okay.
Not it.
I'll do my best. And again, a lot of this is way over my head because engineers, that's what part of this grant does. It gets our engineers involved
Kara
in
says the
bringing
same
this
thing,
forward.
so you know, so you're
Good,
good.
good. We're on the same page. It really is a partnership between Pickens County, mostly in the public works area, and the airport, and our two other partners are RAFTA and Holy Cross. And it's a partnership that really looks at battery storage for electricity, utilizing the existing solar farm that was just completed not too long ago, and then additional solar panels within that general campus. It's set up to help us with resiliency. So as you recall, the fire that happened a few years ago, we were, I believe, one pole away from losing all the electricity up here. So this is redundancy in systems and trying to set us up to be self-sufficient within that campus itself if we do have an outage. So we use a battery backup to be able to run those facilities. So it's going to call for batteries located at RAFTA, also our Public Works building, and then over at the airport, so that if we do have break-in service, we're able to sustain ourselves, at least for a period of time. Part of this is going to be an agreement between the entities of how we shed electricity if we're, if it's a longer time period. So we'll have to kind of shed things like we do with this building. Whenever we're trying to run on a generator, there's only certain aspects of this building that operate. So we would have to do that in partnership with the others, with RAFTA and everybody else. But it's nice to know that that's there for the airport if we do lose electricity out there.
We're looking at some more solar capabilities with the Public Works facility, RAFTA, the airport.
And the airport, yeah, all three
I
of
think
those.
those are the three, and Holy Cross for our partners.
Holy Cross with the partner with the existing solar farm that we have there as well.
Yeah, so initially it will be tied in to the 5 megawatt facility constructed in Brush Creek, and then as we develop out solar facilities, I think initially we'll have some potentially additional at Public Works. In the future, we'll have additional at the airport that will feed the system to make it resilient, but also allow us to operate on renewable sources and move towards that net zero goal.
Right. Good.
Longer term, as part of this is kind of the thermal side of things, to where we can, it calls for putting a pipe underneath the ground eventually to get over to the airport, and utilizing thermal system that we could snow melt the apron, which is
Big deal.
that's exciting. Yeah, when you think about the man hours and the equipment used, maybe be able to reduce the amount of equipment and that heavy equipment to be able to do the snow removal there is another way of, again, is reducing our emissions through this project. So.
And increasing public safety, trying to get out from the terminal to the plane.
Yeah.
Except we'll have jetways by then, right?
Yeah, that's in your
Okay.
plan.
So, are there any comments or questions from the board? Steve, please.
Well, I think Rich kind of addressed it there, that I look at the 4 partners and I feel bad that the sanitation district isn't a 5th partner, because it was their land at the solar farm. In a sense, they almost are a partner because they provided the land for the solar farm. And eventually, they might become a partner in providing heat for the thermal part of it.
Right.
But I realize for the existing grant that they're not part of that. And I think that they could join it eventually, which would be good.
Yeah, and John's talked about this, I believe, is kind of modular. So, the notion is we can get it established, we can add to it, and the ultimate goal is to replicate this in other areas around the area that may be able to benefit from the knowledge we gain by doing this. So yeah, to your point, Steve, there's other partners. I believe the college was considered there, right, at one point. So there may be some others.
Yeah, and I think in the future, once we prove concept and such, you'll see an expansion. And I fully expect the future of grid development is going to be along this kind of microgrid, cells of renewable and storage throughout the network. And so this is really at the front end of proving out that technology, and not just the technology. I think one of the bigger barriers is the business model, because if you think about it, this is a significant change in terms of what's being sold and managed, particularly by our utility partner. And so before you expand it too far, you have to figure out those things. So we're basically partnering to do some research and development, if you will, not just on the technology side, but on the business model side with our utility. And once that's once both sides are proved out, then I'd anticipate, Steve, that we'll see more facilities and such coming on board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And actually, that's one of the reasons why Pickens County got the grant from the state, was that it's like a unique project that figuring out how to do this, and then other people across the state could replicate the same model.
Mm-hmm. And it's complicated. The more we get into it, the more you hear us coming saying, we're not the experts on this. But it is an exciting project, and I really think is the future of grids in the United States. Yeah.
And we are always going to be open for more grant monies, and so the public knows that this does not stop us from looking at further grant dollars, which I think we might find out there. Other than new partners, additional partners, I think there's going to be some opportunities for looking at other funds. So, okay, this is a public hearing. I'm going to open this item up for the public. Any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? The item being the our ABC microgrid, integrated clean energy microgrid project, and our acceptance of a grant from the Department of Local Affairs at the state level. And the grant was in the amount of $1,700,000. So we're going to give the public a few minutes. Seeing Dan Bartholomew is still watching us. Okay, I'm going to give the public a little bit longer here because it takes a little while to connect. So the numbers are posted for public comment, or Zoom ID, and the password. And it's, if you were here, it is *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. So, seeing no members of the public coming forward, I'm going to leave this public hearing open for the next item on our agenda, but I'm going to move us forward. If the board has any comments or questions, or a motion would be greatly appreciated.
I would move to approve on second reading a resolution of the BOCC authorizing acceptance of the State of Colorado Department of Local Affairs Renewable and Clean Energy Initiative for Phase 1A of the AABC Integrated Clean Energy Microgrid Project.
Good, thank you. And do I have a second?
I'll second it and have a comment.
Yes, please, Steve.
So I think this project is really important. I place it on the order of magnitude of importance with the solar farm construction, and probably also with the methane capture project in Coal Basin. the fact that this would include electricity storage system, which is really new to our way of thinking and our systems and everything, is an important aspect of it. And by putting in high level of electricity storage, we're in effect lowering the requirement for having a demand load that runs all night, like a coal plant providing electricity all night, because the batteries can do that, provide the electricity at nighttime. And we can eliminate the need for example, a coal plant operating somewhere in the state to provide that electricity. So in the scale of looking at our climate action plan, this is an important aspect of it.
Right. And Francie is not with us today, but I will bring up her concern about the lithium batteries needed for this storage project. And because of the difficulties in mining lithium and the devastation to natural environments due to that. And I will chime in also. I tend to agree with her. And I think the board has acknowledged the fact that with technology changing, we see somewhere in the future perhaps a better technology for storage other than using mega lithium batteries. So we'll look forward to seeing that technology coming forward. So I have a motion. I have a second. Do I have any other comments from the board? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0 with Francie being absent.
Thank you, Board.
Next item is ordinance of the Board of Commissioners accepting the Deer Hammer property conservation easement and Lime Creek access and recreational easement. And Paul Holsinger, thank you for being here. It's so nice to see you.
It is nice to be in the room.
Yeah, we like that. So Paul, please.
Yeah, my name is Paul Holsinger. I'm the Agriculture and Conservation Easement Administrator. And this property came to us through the limited development conservation parcel process. As you know, Stanley Deerhammer has been working with community development to go through that process to conserve his property, limit the development on the property, and also obtain TDRs. And I'm going to share where this is. But nothing has changed since the last, since first reading. And just to give everybody a good visual of where this is Rudai Reservoir over here. So we're over in the Meredith Thomasville area. Stanley owns about 168 acres right here. This is the Eagle Thomasville Road that cuts through. And he has a small cabin. It's about 900 square feet right on the river. He's limiting the development of that to be expanded no more than 1,750 square feet. He's also limiting the accessory structures to what is on the property, so that square footage will remain. And that square footage is 3,560 square feet. I've been working with his folks to still finalize some details in the conservation easement, but the terms of that easement are pretty well established. We're just figuring out the size of the activity envelope, which is pretty small at this point, and getting some of those details worked out. But like I said, nothing has changed since first reading. We are also obtaining a fishing easement or access and recreation easement along Lime Creek. And I'll pull up a closer view here. Let's see if I need to. Nope. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So here's a closer view here. Lime Creek runs through the property right here, and we have good access from via the Forest Service, as well as off of, like I said, the Eagle Thomasville Road crosses it here. It says Stanley offered a fishing easement as well within Lime Creek. I want to make sure folks know that within that document, we're prohibiting commercial use so that this will be open to the general public, but there's not going to be commercial guiding allowed on this section. So any members of the public can go out there and not get, overrun with a bunch of folks and a bunch of rods. So we were happy to write that in. But yeah, Stanley was kind enough to include that within his offering here. So we're getting this Lime Creek easement. There's going to be a parking area right over here. We're going to be hopefully finalizing that pretty soon here, the details of where that parking and how the plat visualizes that. But otherwise, yeah, nothing has changed, and it's ready to go. I hope to get this done within the next month or so.
Great. Questions, comments from the board? Kelly, please.
I guess I'm just a little confused about the process if we're approving something that's not final now.
Yeah, we have the draft conservation easement and the draft recreation easement included in your packet. And there's just a few items that need to be updated. The fishing easement, we just need the survey to be completed. And so that's just going to be an exhibit. Otherwise, the language of that document is not going to change. The other thing that, like I said, we're waiting on is the actual square footage or acreage of the activity envelopes. So they were tightening them up. Right now, they've designated the envelope to just run along the driveway. Right along here, they have a small envelope around these buildings and a small envelope around this existing house. They're going to also have an area where they may want to move the house away from the river just off to the side here. So those are just the one detail we need to hammer out. So that's also just going to be a plat that we're going to need to finalize.
I see. So before that, the plat is signed off, all those numbers will be final.
Yeah, we're going to incorporate that
before
into
actually the conservation easement is signed off on, even though we're approving it. So these are more a matter of we know the specifics, we just don't know the details within the specifics. So that's a great question. I was thinking the same thing.
So it doesn't have to come back to us for an amendment in the future?
No.
Unless something major happens.
We certainly try not to amend these once they're done, although there are a few that seem to keep popping up.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board?
So did you see that Patrick raised his hand?
Oh, no, because I don't have him on here.
There he is.
I think he would
Patrick,
be.
if you're here with us, if you would like to make any comments, please do. Yeah, I don't see him on my screen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Here's Patrick.
We can see,
Yeah,
we
hi.
can hear you.
Yeah, for the record, Patrick Crawley, Stan Clausen Associates. I just wanted to add, and I'm just here as a member of the public, I guess, basically. But, answer any questions that you have. Obviously, what Paul has said is entirely correct. We have an activity envelope plan that Leslie and I have preliminarily discussed. I've just provided a draft to her, so we'll finalize those locations and areas, but it's pretty well developed, and only minor changes that I can see happening. And then as far as the fishing easement, Paul, I think we have a completed survey that extended the easement on the other side of the bridge to the north where Paul indicated. So again, as Paul has said, we are very close to finalizing everything, and it's just very minor details that would change.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
All right.
nice to see you guys.
Any other things from the board before I open the public comment? Okay, this is a public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. What?
*6 to raise your hand, *9.
Oh, no. Last time I said *9 to raise your hand and you told me I was
You're
right.
absolutely right.
They're testing me again. Skylar, thank you for testing me and I passed. So, any members of the public wishing to speak? I see a hand raised, but it's right in the middle of Steve's head. Oh. Was a cursor or something there running around? All right. Seeing none, I am going to bring it back to the board, but I'm also going to close the public hearings for the this section of our agenda. Bring it back to the board for comments, questions, or for a motion, please. Steve, please.
Well, I would like to make the motion to approve the ordinance authorizing and accepting the Deerhammer property conservation easement and Lime Creek access and recreation easement.
I have a
I'll
motion. Kelly has the second. Okay, any other comments? Seeing none. Steve, please.
Well, I would like to thank Stan Deerhammer and Patrick Raleigh for working on this project. It's been quite a long, lengthy process getting through all the things, but appreciate their efforts, and I'm really glad that this land just above Thomasville will be protected. I think it's an important view plane and important for the wildlife also right there.
And Steve, I want to congratulate you for not getting tackled in the backfield by Mr. Deerhammer when we were up there taking our site visit.
No, I tackled Stan.
Oh, you tackled Stan. I knew that we went one way or the other.
The story gets better.
Yeah, and I'm making it up as I go along, yeah. It's an exceptional piece of property in an exceptional place up there, and I'm really excited about the little recreation easement that's there. I think it'll be a great amenity to people in that neighborhood or people who know about it. And so therefore, we're going to move on. I'm going to have a motion and a second. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0. Francie is not here with us today. Thank you, Paul, and thank you for coming in. We really appreciate seeing you.
Thank you.
Thank
Next
you.
item
Bye-bye.
is an emergency ordinance, first reading. It's an emergency ordinance approving the purchase of condominium unit 417E, F5, Building F, Picken Park Place condominiums. I believe that's out at the AABC. And I believe Phyllis is already right here sitting with us.
Here for you. Hi, Phyllis Mattias, Deputy County Manager. Picken County already owns a unit in this building, 417 AABC. It is an 8-unit condominium building, and one of the owners of the other units came and approached the county and asked if we wanted to buy their unit. The price that they were asking is really reasonable given these the housing prices these days. He worked off of the assessor's value, which was, I believe, $450,000, and we are purchasing it for $495,000. It's a 2-bedroom. There are current tenants in it, which are going to stay in the unit and be a community unit, is the intent. So those folks will stay. Eventually, you'll see leases come back for this unit for the new, the same tenants, new lease. And we are scheduled to close on April 25th. We have an inspection going on today, and the tenants have been great working with us on making sure everything goes on, as well as the current owner, who's Todd Haberman, who is a longtime person who's grew up here. I guess he's always been a person, probably.
For all those years he's been alive, he's been a person.
And so we're pretty excited. I think he would find other owners, other purchasers that would be interested in owning this unit, and we're pretty excited. The HOA is pretty healthy. I happen to be the president of that HOA, which is a little odd. As a Picken County owner of one of the units, there was an election, so hopefully.
Lucky you.
So it's great that it's in good shape, and that's something that's always, you always want to know.
I just have a question. Why is this an emergency ordinance?
In order to have the closing on the 23rd, is my understanding of.
The 23rd of today?
25th of April.
Like today? Okay, thank you.
Wrong date.
And Greg, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want clarification, Phyllis. I'm looking at in the packet, it says budgetary impact is $695. I thought you said $495. $695 sounds closer, but did you say $495?
I hopefully said $695 because it's $695. The number in the packet is correct. I'm trying, I couldn't get the printer upstairs to work. So Patty, I don't know why.
There's a glitch in the Xerox.
Yeah. So I'm working off the AIS on my phone, which is not easy to read.
And the appraiser, and the appraised value was, sorry, once again.
$649, I believe. And so,
There it is, yep.
and
Yep,
that,
okay.
the assessor's value, which is a year old at this point, because we're going into reevaluation next. So when we came to an agreed cost for it, we felt that that was a good price.
Right, I see it here. Thank you. That makes sense to me. Thank you.
And I want to thank Todd for reaching out to the county first and foremost. And I believe there's an existing tenant and there's a lease with that tenant. We're gonna honor until such time as the tenant doesn't want to continue, or
First is they're in a current lease that ends the end of April, so we will honor 5 days of their lease with Todd. So the attorney's office had made sure whatever legal has to be done to accept those 5 days. And then there'll be a new lease that starts on May 1st that will be with the county.
and will we offer that to the existing tenant to see if
It's-
they?
We agreed upon that at the purchase. It was asked, could the tenants remain there? They are local employees, so they meet that requirement. So we'll do the lease, and then at some point, I guess in the future, one of the things, as we're trying to figure out our rental units, does this stay a community unit, or does it come to be able to be offered to a Picken County employee? But we felt as long as these tenants want to remain, we would extend their lease as long as they're interested.
And
So we may
I-
bring that back to
I
you.
appreciate that, because I think people are living in so many circumstances throughout the valley, throughout everywhere, on this fear of, I'm gonna be evicted because my property's being sold, and where am I gonna go? So, I think that, as long as both parties are agreeable, I think that's a great thing to honor, and I appreciate that.
No, we were happy to do that, and I believe they've lived there for a long time.
So it's nice to keep that community together there. Greg, you still have your hand up. Did you want to comment more? Okay, any other
Nope, I'm good.
Any other comments from the board? So this is an emergency ordinance, and it'll be moved for confirmatory reading, I believe, on April the 13th. And at that point, we will entertain public comment on this item. So if the board doesn't have any more questions or comments, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move to approve an emergency ordinance approving the purchase of condominium unit 417E in Building F of Pitkin Park Place condominiums.
I'll second that.
I have a motion, I have a second. Seeing no further comment, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, so the motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Phyllis.
Okay,
And I've
thank
already
you.
told Charlotte what I think's wrong with the printer upstairs.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So our next item, and I have a question, are these public hearings also?
No,
No.
not
Okay.
noticed public hearings.
Okay, this is just land use action items. So before we start, we have two that are kind of jointly connected. Would the board like to take 10 minutes? We have not had a break yet.
Sure.
Okay, sorry, but you guys can set up. Grassroots will take 10 minutes, thank you.
Get set up.
Did you get an invite to the ski company thing?
No. Meeting with Jordan.
Ski company's doing theirs separate. Okay. Okay, we are back. This is the Board of Pickens County Commissioners. Today is Wednesday, March the 22nd, no, March the 23rd of 2022. This is a continuation of the board's regular meeting agenda. And we have 2 land use items on our agenda. And I think we are there's 2 separate items, but we're kind of merging them. So this should lead to an interesting discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Leslie Lamont.
Okay, so we're going to start with the application for 1120 Shieldo Road, the Tridal property. I think that's first on your agenda.
Yes.
So as a reminder, you considered this November 3rd last year, but I just want to remind you, the applicant requests to remove an employee dwelling unit, that is the title on the deed restriction, the employee dwelling unit deed restriction from this property. The property is located at 1120 Shieldo Road, and I put up a little map here so you guys can get a sense of where the property is. And this is Snowmass Creek Road along here. The EDU is a 1-bedroom Category 1 deed restriction that was created when the property owner at the time competed for a GMQS allotment in 1997. One of the options for the board to consider when someone requests to remove a deed restriction is they would pay an employee housing impact fee. The employee housing impact fee for this particular property would be approximately $129,646. And the employee housing impact fee is calculated on the existing heated square footage on the property. The review was continued after the BOCC initially considered this at your November 3rd meeting. We continued it so the applicant could explore a buy-down option. And Chris will elaborate on that latest scheme. The applicant owns a unit in the Airport Business Center, and they are proposing to partner with the property owners of 711 Willoughby Way, which is your next item on the agenda. They're proposing to partner with 711 Willoughby Way to provide this Airport Business Center deed restricted unit. And I have some property information. This was also in your packet on this unit. So it's 416 Pacific Avenue, which is right across the street from the unit you guys just discussed with Phyllis. It's 2 bedrooms, 1 full bath, and here's a little map here kind of showing where it is. It is 763 square feet. It's in great condition. It was just renovated. The HOA fees are $728 a month. That includes heat, trash and snow removal, ground maintenance, sewer, and 2 parking spaces. In this particular building, there are no other deed restricted units in the building. There's also a pool and a hot tub. Right now, staff is recommending denial of the applicant's proposal, but in my memo, we provided options to you for consideration, and we wanted to give Chris an opportunity to lay out for you their idea of how to make this proposal, to accomplish this proposal. So I'll turn it over to Chris.
Let me
now.
see if the board might have any
Yeah.
questions or clarifications. You're good. I do have a question about the unit at the AABC. What is its current use?
It's occupied. It's a rental unit.
Occupied on a full-time basis or a short-term rental occupancy?
It was a 1-year lease, and it's been extended by either 6 months or 12 months.
Okay,
I'm not
thank
quite
you.
sure. Yeah.
And do we know the appraised value of that?
$765,000.
Okay. Okay, Chris, now that you've answered my questions, I might have more, but please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Chris Bennon with Bennett Adams here on behalf of the applicant. If you don't mind, I will talk about the 7-Eleven Willoughby project as well. I think it makes sense in context. So, as Leslie said, the unit at 1120 Shieldo Road, 900 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment, category 1. It's I've seen plans. It's a nicely laid out unit. It's a little bit remote, sort of tough to get to for a category 1 person. It's not walking distance really to anything. So that's the one sort of challenge that unit has. It is a rental unit, and it's required to be rented. As Leslie mentioned, the payment in lieu would be approximately $130,000. The unit at 711 Willoughby is a 1,000 square foot unit. It's a 2-bedroom unit. It's also an EDU, so it is a rental unit required to be rented. 2-bedroom unit. It's a deed restriction that expires in 22 years. So it's obviously a lot closer to town, reasonable to bike or walk into town on a nice day, certainly. But it does have a deed restriction that expires. The payment in lieu on that unit would be approximately $450,000. We just happen to have, our firm happened to have these two applicants asking for essentially the exact same thing, to provide cash in lieu in exchange for release of the deed restriction on their EDU. The owner of 1120 Shield, Tridel, also owns this unit at the ABC, 416 Pacific Avenue. The more we looked at it, it didn't really make any sense to provide that as a buy-down unit. If his sort of context is $130,000 payment and the unit being worth $765,000, to deed restrict it into what we would expect the county to see as affordable, category 3, category 4, category 5 even, would be too much of a push to get to that number. It just didn't make any sense. The 711 Willoughby client, when we were here, did propose the cash in lieu. The board seemed to indicate a reluctance to accepting the cash in lieu. We continued with a request to us to see if we could be a little more creative. They certainly looked around town. There's units at Hunter Creek that are theoretically available to deed restrict. They've been sort of pre-approved by the housing authority. They're privately owned. There's 4 of them, and they get peppered with requests to sell, and they're not selling. I was here maybe 2 years ago. There used to be 5 units in Hunter Creek, and we were asked to go out and see if we can cold call and see if someone wanted to sell, and it just happened to fall into place. But those owners are not looking to sell, at least not right now. And we did not want to go out and try to secure a unit, especially in this kind of rapid action market, because we'd have to probably actually close before we could come and propose to you, what do you think of this unit? So all that being said, we put the 2 clients together. The $130,000 for 1120 Shield and the $450,000 for 711 Willoughby adds to about $580,000 if we were to pay a cash in lieu. The unit at 416 Pacific Avenue at the ABC, we did get an appraisal that came back in January at $765,000. 2 months has passed, so that's probably another $100,000 in value. But that's what it appraised at, $765,000. Leslie Lamont and Sidney Christensen did go out to the unit, checked it out. It's freshly remodeled, brand new kitchen, brand new bathroom. It's a great unit. So our proposal is to combine the efforts of these 2 applicants in the deed restriction of this unit at the ABC in exchange for the release of those 2 EDUs. We think it's an appealing offer. Both of the EDUs in question have some sort of challenge to them. The one on Shieldo Road is remote and not the ideal location for affordable housing. The unit on Willoughby Way has a deed restriction that expires. It's 22 years from now, which is sort of off the edge of the horizon, but it will come eventually, and that deed restriction will expire. Both units are rental units and may come with some challenge to ensure the deed restriction is being fully respected. So the EDUs both have a little bit of a discount, if you will, to them. The unit at the ABC is really ideally situated. It serves essentially as affordable housing now, that the folks that live there work here in town. And as do a lot of folks, good transit service, really an ideal place for affordable housing. Our proposal, as I would expect I would get a question from Mr. Postman about the numbers that we've been citing in terms of the cash in lieu. If you draw a line down through the center of the land use code, it tells you these numbers for the cash in lieu payment. We know that this is a discretionary review by the board, and that you'd like to sort of see that line bend towards affordability. What we propose is to combine the two efforts and essentially hand the keys over on this unit to the county. It represents a sort of an increase in the payment, if you will, in the difference between the appraised value, which is $765, and the combined cash in lieu value, which is $580. That difference is about $185,000 in sort of value that we'd be stepping away from. We know that you probably need to go through some process to make sure that you are fully satisfied with the unit. We have the appraisal, have provided that to staff. Staff has been in the unit. I'm sure you would be pleased with the condition of the unit itself, but certainly if you need to take some time to make, fully vet the unit. But that's our proposal, is to essentially deed the unit over to the county. Then you as a board would need to decide whether that becomes a unit that you rent to county staff, if you put it into the general housing lottery, if you sell it and recoup the monies, it becomes your unit at that point. We would ask that you respect the natural life of the existing lease through the current tenancy. One note on the HOA fees. There is a capital assessment in place right now. So the HOA fees are currently $748 per month, and that consists of $456 per month of regular assessment and $291 per month of capital assessment. So there's sort of what I can perceive by looking at minutes is a sort of some new owners coming in, a deeper appreciation for having a healthy HOA and a fully funded capital assessment fund. So there's a little bit of catch-up activity going on. So that's at least through 22 is my understanding, is the extra $291 per month. So that's what makes up that HOA fee. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions that you have.
Do you want me to put the unit info back up?
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Any questions from the board? Steve, please.
So, I don't understand the $185,000 difference between the appraised value. Does someone pay that, or do they just eat it, or does the owner of the Willoughby Way one pay the other owner who owns the unit some of that difference?
Yeah. Much of the creativity that we had to bring in the last few months is putting the owners together, getting over the sort of hurdle of, the land use code gives you this number, but the county is expecting more, or at least there's some hesitancy in accepting that number. So the agreement between the parties is essentially to combine their efforts and then give that unit to the county at no cost to the county.
So they basically are just taking less than the appraised value in effect.
Yeah, so, yeah, you're right. I mean, between the two of them, they share that, coming up with the extra 185. Yeah.
Okay.
And just to note, both units would be converted into a CDU, so no actual physical changes, still full kitchen, bath, et cetera, but the occupancy would be at the option of the owner.
Mm-hmm.
I like this next picture. It looks like we're on the beach now.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great unit, and I would hope that the board at least see that the quality of the unit is there.
There it is.
Am I scrolling too fast for you
No,
guys?
no. That's fine. I was just wondering where the
This was also
palm
in
trees
your
came.
packet.
Yeah.
So another question,
Go
the Willoughby Way one, would the 22-year apply to the CDU also, or would that be terminated? Would it just become a CDU forever, basically? What happens?
Yeah, we would likely be required to and can update the deed restriction for a CDU to the modern CDU, current CDU requirements, which don't expire.
Okay.
Right. So if that were the route for either of these properties or both of these properties, we would amend the resolution finding that the board has also approved a special review for a CDU. And then that carries its own deed restriction with it that needs to be recorded.
Okay.
Okay, Kelly.
Okay. I just want to summarize my understanding, and then you guys can correct me where I've got it wrong. So we have a one-bedroom, 900 square foot EDU that has been occupied by a renter per the requirements of being an EDU. And we have a two-bedroom EDU, which has been occupied per the requirements of an EDU, and that's 700 square feet, I think, right? The two-bedroom.
The one on.
One of them will be is 1,000 square feet.
Okay. Shieldo's 700.
And that one expires in
Correct.
20, okay. So I'm just sort of looking, if we can look at apples to apples, from 1,900 square feet to 700 square feet and 3 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms, plus a value added, right? Like the value added to the county for the additional monies that would not otherwise be required to the tune of $185,000. So those to me, when I'm looking at sort of gains and losses here, as we weigh this benefit. I don't know, this is a tough one, I guess, because, if affordable housing is appropriate in the outside the urban growth boundary, like these are the places where it's appropriate, like these sort of limited, dispersed types of affordable housing. And once we give that up, we will never get that back, right? So if there's ever any hope of having affordable housing outside of the urban growth boundary where it is appropriate, we will be giving it up in this and losing 2 units that we are unlikely to get somewhere else. And so in the end, for me, is that a net loss in potential? Because there's always potential in the ABC, right? For us to have affordable housing there. So I think for me, that's where I'm kind of struggling a little bit on this. So I guess you guys have clarified that at least I have the math right to compare, and then the other components are my editorial about, whether this is the best decision for us to take this, even as I appreciate the creativity around it. So that's what I'm thinking about, and I look forward to further
my
input
first
from board
point was going to
members.
be, I too appreciate the concept of this. That's why we allowed you to come back, because we have to think out of the box in these, to find solutions to our housing issues. There was a great deal of talk, because I made a great deal of notes, about this qualified employer that would be by, because we still have a concern over $280 or $250, I mean $700, whatever that number is for the HOA dues, which is expensive. And the fact that it's would be the only deed restricted unit in a free market unit, we run into lots of problems with that in the past, and we need to learn from lessons learned. And so I am concerned about, I don't know how that long discussion in this agenda packet information about a qualified employee, would that be the county's employer to purchase this unit and then deed restrict that to qualified employees to live in it? And then the qualified employer who bought it would then be responsible for covering this high-cost HOA. And I'm like, that's a lot of detail that's not really clear. And I didn't hear any presentation about that. And does that onus fall on the county to find a qualified employer to buy this? I'm not sure we're gonna have an employer out there who's gonna pay the price to buy the unit and then suck up $700 and something a month in fees. And so I'm not comfortable with that aspect. And on top of that, I think it's appropriate to have an EDU at Shieldo. There's others up there, and it also provides a diverse, housing opportunity for people. And whoever is living in it now, chances are they either work somewhere in that neighborhood, in that midsection of the valley. And Willoughby, is that unit within the UGB? So we have a unit now that's in the UGB, which is something we strive for. It is walkable to town. And we're losing a bedroom in here, which is an employee. So while I think, again, the concept, it might be workable in another situation, I'm just concerned about the unit, the complex in which the unit is at the ABC, and the cost of the monthly homeowners dues, and the fact that this would be the only deed restricted in a free market complex. So I have those concerns that I had at the beginning of this, and I still have. And again, if somebody clarify this, a qualified employer purchasing it for qualified employees, and who's responsible for doing that, and is it even possible?
So I can address the employer concept. So when Tridal originally contemplated this as the 1120 Shieldo, their sort of context is the $130,000 payment. They have this unit that's appraised at $765, so obviously they're not going to deed restrict it all the way down to a category 3 or whatever and sell it through the lottery, because that's a $500,000 difference, and it just can't make sense, the numbers. But what would make sense to them, if they're on their own, would be to deed restrict it at, say, a category 4 rental, and then sell it to an employer. And an employer would be responsible for the HOA dues. Those are not, you can't pass those through to the occupant. And the rental rate is set. But an employer, oftentimes, and this happened a bunch in town, can justify a higher purchase price to sort of secure the affordable housing for their business. And so they, it's not quite to a free market, but you can get a little bit more out of it, and you can make the numbers make sense, and that's how we could get down to say a category 4 rental owned by an employer.
And Tridal or somebody that would be different from just giving us a unit. They would transact all of that, find the qualified employer and
Correct.
All that, and then who would be responsible for managing that unit at the end of the day?
That would be that employer, and they're either putting it into a pool of units that they already own, but it's up to them to manage.
That's another creative thought, but I'm not quite clear on.
Well, and just clarify on that thought for me, this is the owner of the Shieldo property?
That's only if it's just that owner, yeah. So we sort of stepped through that.
But the benefit there is now you're going from 1 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms. It does cancel out the Willoughby Way person, but there's a little bit of a more even gain, because then you're going from 900 square feet to 730 square feet instead of 1,900 square feet to 730 square feet. Anyway, so we can contemplate that.
Yeah, and the need for a category 4 rental. I mean,
There's a need.
Thanks for that clarification, because I thought it was still the two of them coming in on that qualified employer.
And if I could just add to that, as you saw in Cindy Christensen's referral comments, you know, they would make sure that the category deed restriction is in place, and they would also want to make sure that the employer who's purchasing the unit is a qualified employer of our area, and the unit would have to remain with a qualified employer.
So in the future, if it's sold, it'd have to be another. What happens if there wasn't a qualified employer?
Well,
or one that wanted to be, was interested in purchasing now or in the future, then what would happen to the unit? I mean, there's a lot of good thoughts, but there's a lot of unknowns.
I would imagine that it would be a very similar process to someone who now has a deed restricted unit, wants to remove that deed restriction. The reso, the approval when the deed restriction would be covering that specific concept, and to be amended
So there's a
would
lot
be-
of details that are
Right.
unknown.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification, because I thought Willoughby was in with Shieldo on the whole gamut of
When this
opportunities.
memo was written and the referral comments were provided to you, that was the idea at the time. When we were on our site visit, we were talking, brainstorming because of this high HOA fee. So that, this memo and the referral comments are provided to you with the concept at the time of maybe an employer purchasing this.
Okay, thank you. I just don't want the county to be stuck with a unit that has a $700 bazillion monthly HOA, and how we're gonna manage it in a complex that doesn't have any other deed restricted units, so
And
that's my
I
concern.
put up on the screen for you guys the location, the 711 Willoughby Way unit.
And I did want to emphasize that I think the reason and rationale behind putting these two applicants together is that we could be in a position of just handing you the unit. It comes along with operation complexity, and I get all that. But it's also, I mean, like any other employer, you're in a position of looking out for your own employees, in addition to your sort of responsibilities of looking out for the broader community, and affordable housing is one of the bigger challenges. So, you know, coming in with a cash in lieu, you know, regardless of what the land use code tells you and how to calculate it and so on, is, you know, it's not a very attractive offer, even though your fees are up to date and all that kind of stuff. So we know that inherently you like to see actual units, and this puts you in a position of literally being able to provide a unit to you as either as an employer or as a representative of the community, where you can put that into a housing pool. It does come along with these HOA fees. There's this catch-up capital assessment component to it. But practically any unit you're going to look at in buying down, you're going to have something that you're looking at and saying, well, this isn't exactly the perfect scenario.
Yeah, thank you.
But it's, I mean, it's a great location. It's a beautiful unit. That you know, a lot of employees live there. You know, you're an established community. You can walk over to the grocery store. I mean, there's a lot of really great aspects to it that you don't get, and frankly, on either of these properties.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. It's just that there's something in my gut saying, as much as I would appreciate your handing over the keys to the county, as the county, I don't think I want this unit because of all the outstanding issues with it. And is it really affordable to our employees if, you know, the county's going to have to subsidize the HOA fee to make it affordable? I mean, there's just a lot of.
Turn around and sell it and put 800 grand in the
Yeah,
housing
but then
fund.
we lose 2 units that we have now that are existing. One of them that, you know, granted, who knows what's going to happen in 22 years. They may choose to keep it for another, we don't know. We don't know what the ownership will do there. So, again, a lot of unknowns. So, Steve or Greg?
Well, I guess I had questions about the HOA fees. To me is something I wouldn't want the county to get into, an HOA fee that is that large. And I wonder how easy it would be for us to sell the unit. I mean, get it through this transaction and then sell it and then use the money to purchase whatever, you know, at some point, another unit that more fits what we usually like to have in our inventory.
Well, Chris has been looking for them, and there are not any
Yeah.
out there.
Well,
so.
it's maybe not there now. Maybe the county would have the unit for a couple of years, and then at the first opportunity when we find a buyer for this and buy another unit somewhere. Maybe, a lot of the units we buy are not in Aspen. They're farther, by Basalt or farther down, but I'd kind of like to know what John and Rich's take on this is.
And Phyllis.
You've worked so many deals over the years on, what are good units for the county to have in our inventory. I'm scared away a little bit by this whole, the APSHA letter and the different mechanizations of it that I didn't quite understand that, so.
Yeah, way to put me on the spot, Steve. I think the board is hitting on, the right kinds of questions that staff would also have about, whether this is going to be an appropriate transaction. I think there are some advantages in terms of location and convenience, particularly when it comes to the Shield O property and the exchange there. Kelly, I thought you laid out very well. There's, kind of the pluses and minuses there. The HOA dues are a real concern, and we have traditionally shied away from fully free market developments or complexes because of that. Oftentimes, more so, not just the fees that you do know, but the future assessments that you don't know that some of the free market folks would be able to absorb that may be more difficult for somebody who's Category 3 unless they are subsidized on an ongoing basis by an employer, whether that be the county or business group. I think we would probably need some more time. Steve, I was looking at the code, and that this is discretionary, and then it also ties to the housing impact fee, which kind of also probably isn't how we would look at the deal from the start. We would look at the relative values of the properties and what's going back to the owners, not in relation to the housing impact fee if this were a clean slate deal versus what the owners are getting in exchange compared to what we're getting in exchange. And I don't have that data in front of me right now. Chris may have that, so I wouldn't be prepared to talk about how we'd look at it if it were outside of this land use process. But we would be looking at it, what values are being exchanged, and then how are we meeting the affordable housing and needs in a sustainable manner. Fees are a concern there. So I didn't give you a definite answer there, Steve, but I think you all are wrestling with the right questions right now.
Greg, I see that smirk on your face there. Did you want to comment?
It's a smirk of confusion, because I what John said is that I think he's saying they would want more information and to contemplate this more, and frankly, I would too. I feel as if I'm looking at a net loss of housing units no matter what. That they would give us this unit, which I believe is filled with local workers presently at the ABC. So it's not a net gain of affordable housing units. It's just a change of ownership, and then a net loss in the properties in Willoughby and Shield O. Kelly's point's well taken. My guess is people up in Shield O probably need employees to do work for them as the houses become more expensive and the homeowners become less interested in doing the manual labor. Maybe it makes sense to have ADUs and employee dwelling units up in those areas. So I'm not sure this is a net gain. but I don't understand it well enough. I'll confess to that. I'd still love to, you know, go back and chew on this with staff so I can understand it better. I'm also wondering, you know, the additional HOA due supplement seems to have a nebulous end date. It's $295 extra per month till the end of this year. That's what, $3,000 or $3,600. That's not a deal breaker by any stretch. If it were to end then, I can imagine the sellers just pitching that in. If that's a problem. But it would be nice to have some certainty, like how long is that inflated HOA dues going to be going on in order to reach whatever parity they're looking for. So those are my questions. I certainly wouldn't be ready to approve it today. I'm not ready to kick it out the door yet either. That's it. Well, that's all I've got for you, Patty.
Boy, that was really helpful. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Yeah, I think I'm more inclined to focus on a deal involving the Shield O and this unit or a different unit, rather than including the Willoughby Way in with it, because it just, and I guess that really depends on how motivated the owners of Shield O are to do this, and you know, maybe this just isn't the right unit. Like, by not doing anything now, you guys preserve the ability to come back when a different package can come together, I guess. But I'm not feeling like it's sort of a net gain to the community or to the county on this right now.
Yeah, and I think the problem with just bringing Shield in is their cash in lieu would be $130,000 and the unit's worth $765 or something. So there's a little bit of
Yeah,
financial
but then they're
disp-
gaining 900 square feet in a time when, you know,
Yeah.
1,000 square feet is worth 1,000, you know.
Yeah, worth a lot. And that was one of the things, what would these properties
So I
be
think that's
without
what John's
this
getting at when he's
EDU?
like, what is the value of what we're giving up to what?
Yeah. I not exactly clear on what more information the board needs to make a decision. I feel like it was a concept worth considering, and it might work in the future now that Chris has spent a great deal of time vetting most of it out for us, to combine factors. But I am actually more comfortable in keeping the EDUs where they are and how they are at this point. It doesn't mean if some of the details weren't vetted out in the future, that an opportunity with combining applicants to find a unit that is acceptable to the board and doesn't have all these hindrances, I think, hanging over our heads. But so that's pretty much where I stand. Unless the board can convince me of certainties of what information you want, we can continue it for that. If the board chooses, I'm kind of comfortable in where I made my decision because I did spend a lot of time going over this. I must have had other things on my mind, and I decided to concentrate on you, Chris. So,
A distraction.
so Steve, did you have anything more, or I need some direction from the board? Either specific information we can direct staff to bring back, or a decision making at this time.
Well, one thought I had, maybe it would only apply to the Shield O one, but that would be that they would sell that unit to an employer and it would be deed restricted by the employer somehow for their own employee housing, and then they deal with the HOA fees. I'm reluctant for the county to end up owning this unit, even though it looks really nice and it's in a really nice location. It doesn't fit what, we would turn it down if we were looking at buying it ourselves.
Right, and I don't know, I don't want to get the county into trying to find a qualified employer and qualified employees in the future, so, yeah, I agree with Steve on that, Mark, but, yeah, so that's not going to happen. Like Chris said, they'd have to find the buyer, get the process through, and then come back to us and hope that we agree with it. So that's kind of an unknown for the applicants also.
The other thing would be if there were I mean, we could turn it down right now, and then if another, say, a Hunter Creek thing comes up in the next couple of years, and the owners could come back to us at that point.
A denial takes it off our plate
With a
for
different unit,
6
maybe
months?
maybe it would work then. Now, one thing I'm thinking of is, you know, the clock's ticking. In 22 years, we lose the one anyhow.
Well, we don't know what'll happen in 22 years. They may want to roll it over into an EDU again for some other, we don't know
Or they
what'll
might
happen.
find a more appropriate unit to.
Yeah, in the interim.
Yeah.
We're giving you 22 years, Chris, to go out there and find. I think that's plenty of time. You can get the job done. So, and
Also,
a
Patty-
denial, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Well, I'm thinking of, to me, one of the solutions to our housing shortage, housing shortage, is to get more, basically EDUs in already developed housing, in town, close to town, in the urban growth area, close to transit areas, finding whatever incentives it takes to have people do that. It's basically an infill process, getting more people living in the, you know, a big house, basically, that is maybe underutilized. But if an employee who has a job in town could be living there and kind of being the caretaker for that house for the owners, it provides an employee housing unit in a good location and helps us solve some of our worker housing shortage. So that's my vision of a possible way forward for the community, and especially the Willoughby Way unit kind of fits that definition right now for what I think we need more of. So we'd be giving up something that I kind of feel like we need more of anyhow.
Well, and I feel like our master plans favor this kind of affordable housing, you know, out, you know, in the rural areas.
Yeah. So a denial would mean 6 months you could not come back before us, am I correct?
Correct, is that correct, John? Ely? A denial puts the applicant off for 6 months, right? They can't come back.
Based upon a process in the land use code, I was just looking at your memo, Leslie. It seems that this might be outside enough that they don't need to wait that 6 months. But I was in the middle of reading your memo, actually, to try to determine that very thing. So
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, because I would hate to do a 6 month out and then have Chris find something in 2 months that's gonna work, and we need to turn it around quickly. So, Chris, you did wanna,
Yeah, I was going to suggest to the board, I think our interest is in, you know, having the board contemplate this as a joint effort, whether it happens here today or you need to continue it, but keep them together as a joint effort. If it's not going to be a joint effort, I would then want them handled individually. And then lastly, if it looks like you're heading towards a denial, I'd want the opportunity to withdraw the application so we don't have a denial sitting on the title for forever.
okay, so thank you. I'm gonna bring it back to the board because, again, if we continue this, I'm not exactly sure what more information the board would need to make a decision. I think we've been pretty clear vetting out the information we have before us, so I'm not gonna continue it in vain. I'm gonna allow the board to, you know, give indication of where the board's decision might be today and let Chris make the right decision for his applicants. So, Greg, do you have any definite specifics you want to continue? I don't, myself.
I was just going to say for the purposes to keep us moving here, I would put a motion on the table to deny this request.
Okay, before we do that, I'm going to let it come back to Chris, but I think that's where I am. I need to see where the other two members of the board or one member of the board might be.
Which request is Greg motioning?
Okay, Greg, are you motioning to deny, would you be in denial of both applications ahead in front of us?
It seems that it's not workable, so I'd say yes
Okay.
to deny both.
Kelly or Steve? Kelly?
No, I mean, I was a little more open to sort of figuring out if there was a deal on Shieldo. I think Willoughby Way for me is a no.
I think Shieldo would be tough because of the discrepancy in dollars. 130 versus the 750.
But again, I mean, I think John raised a really important point that, like, from their perspective, they could be gaining $900,000 in value by having total control of that. So I don't want to presume, just based on the employee housing fee, that is the only number we're looking at.
Then does
Or they're looking at.
If they worked that out and they were to then give that unit to the county, do you, as a member of the Board of Commissioners or representing the county, want that unit with the HOA dues and the free market complex?
I'd probably say we take it and sell it.
Okay. And then put that money into our housing fund. But we'd be
Or let them try to work out if they can come to us with a deal where there is somebody lined up to buy it as an owner, as an owner.
So I think Kelly's looking at
rental.
continuing the Shieldo, so you can go back to your applicant and find out if there's any flexibility on the Shieldo. And I think
I can revise my motion to continue then.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna take,
Amendment.
I'm not gonna be accepting motions because I want Chris to help us decide what he wants to do for his applicant. So Steve, where would you be?
Well, I mean, I sense the direction the whole board is going, and I'm totally on the fence. I don't think we should get the Pacific Avenue unit, which would mean I would not be in favor of this transaction right now. I would, if there were another unit that comes up in the next, couple of years or whatever, that fit what we want and what APSHA would want, then to me, I would take another look at it at that point, but I'm leaning more towards denying it today.
Denying both?
But I don't fully understand what
John, I'll get to you in a minute.
what you're talking about on the Shieldo unit, Kelly.
I guess what I'm thinking about with the Shieldo is it's a more comparable trade, number one, right? You're going from a 1-bedroom at 900 square feet to a 2-bedroom at 730 square feet. So just, there's not as much of a net loss there. What the applicant, the owner of Shieldo, gets is 900 square feet of CDU that they can use privately as they desire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which to me adds a whole value to their property that from their perspective may be well above and beyond the $125,000 fee in lieu. That's worth it to them. I don't know that to be true. But, I'm not just looking at the value of our employee housing mitigation money in terms of what might be incentive for them to work out a deal on the AABC unit.
So you're
I don't think I'm
looking-
doing a very good job.
You're looking at providing Chris with an opportunity to go back to his
Yeah.
applicant and see what the applicant has to say. I don't have a problem with that. Let me see what John
Yeah,
Ely
that
is.
total privacy, that just complete elimination of that has value that goes above and beyond $125,000. That I don't want to preclude any deal.
I bring it closer.
By denying it now, so.
John Ely, you have your hand up patiently?
Couple of things. First, the way that Kelly just articulated the issue, at least in terms of value, is correct. The principle involved here is that the county cannot require a contribution either in real estate or money or in-kind buy-down that exceeds the value or the amount of the exaction fee. However, a property owner can always request transactions such as this and go above that requirement. It's perfectly acceptable for us to go forward. And there may very well be other ancillary benefits to the property owner involved with the payment of an impact fee or the provision of an existing unit into the affordable housing or employee housing stock that makes sense for that person or that private property owner. So we can always entertain something that is involves a unit that has a value in excess of what the fee would be. So there's that. The other thing I would mention is it seems to me the workaround, if you wanted to do something concerning the Shieldo CDU,
the workaround wouldn't be for the county to take the title to the ABC unit, because then we are on the hook for fees and anything else. What we are really considering is the establishment of a covenant, just like we have a covenant now on the unit out in Shieldo. And we would be substituting a covenant for one unit to another unit. And the covenant would run with the property, would be binding on the property, and the property would be owned by somebody else. It's very similar to the unit that Phyllis just brought in for the county to acquire. The concept there is that the unit is owned by a qualified employer and then made available to a qualified employee. Doesn't have to be an employee of that particular owner, it just has to be a qualified employee. The qualified owner simply has to be a qualified employer, and that's what it is. And so if the property owner who has it now wants to sell it, that transaction has to be approved by APCHA or the county, and it has to be to a qualified employer. And then that employer has to use the property to make it available for a qualified employee, whatever category or however you want to have that set up. The county is never in this for money. The property owner is in it for money. The property owner has to make a determination, do I keep this unit and have to pay the assessments and rent it for a restricted amount or not? And if they want to sell it, they can sell it. It's too expensive to maintain, then sell it. And if it doesn't move, then reduce your price, sell it for something else. The county doesn't have to be on the hook for any of the assessments. The owner is on the hook for the assessments.
And the county would still get the fee in lieu of $130,000. No, they wouldn't. How would that work? So they would just be doing a replacement unit for their unit, so there would be no fee in lieu. Okay, got it. I'm just getting sidetracked.
That's your buy down, so to
Yeah,
speak.
it would be a buy down based on just the Shieldo person being able to sell it with a covenant to deed restricted. The county would not be part of ownership, and life would go on. But that's something we need to know if the applicant is willing to do.
Yeah, that's acceptable to us. I mean, we're looking at providing this unit as the exchange for the two units that we've been discussing. We thought providing it to the county, and then you can move it on, you can keep it, you can do whatever you want with it. But if you're hesitant because of the HOA fees and other unknowns about other assessments in the future, there's plenty of employers that if we ring them up this afternoon and say, look, we'd like to move this unit along to you, you're gonna have to accept these HOA fees. I think we get it.
Okay.
I just
Yes,
want to be
pretty
clear,
quickly.
though, I would only be willing to do that for the Shieldo. I
Right.
would divorce the Willoughby Way from this, so that's a different proposal.
Okay, I think I have heard direction from the board, well, in my mind anyway. I would propose that we continue the Shieldo application to come back to us with more clear information as to the process of the current owner of the AABC unit selling that to a qualified employer with a covenant for how it's going to be deed restricted. Bring it back to us in a format that the board is clear on that direction. So we would continue that item, and I think I'm hearing we will allow Chris to withdraw or to allow us to deny the application about Willoughby. Does that sound like what I'm hearing from the board?
That's the direction I'm heading.
Okay.
Can we focus on Willoughby for a second?
Sure.
So I am authorized to provide an offer to you of $550,000 for the fee in lieu. The fee in lieu through the code is $450,000. I'm authorized to present to you $550,000 for consideration of just that individual unit.
And John Ely, we can accept that because we're not requiring it, it's being offered by the applicant, correct?
Yeah, I don't know. I think from a legal point of view, I wouldn't recommend you do anything for less than 8.
I'm sorry, what was the
Less
last?
than, he's saying we should raise the ante to less.
Oh, it's a little tongue in cheek, Patty.
You know, Patty rounds up 800 to $1 million, right?
Still looking for that $1 million, Chris. Gonna get it on one of these. So I would then rather than deny either one of these, continue them out, because I think that we need to have more information on that, and legal counsel.
I'm still a no.
Kelly's still a no.
On 711 Willoughby Way.
Yeah. But I think this is a new opportunity for us to consider. So I think we should allow the applicant time. I am more leaning in Kelly's direction, but let's see what comes back to us after Chris has time to talk with both of his clients, the applicants.
And again, I would just pose, like, interpret, based on what John prodded me to start thinking about, what is 1,000 square feet on Willoughby Way worth? In exchange for us losing a 2-bedroom ED.
Well, it's worth a lot more than my 860 at the trailer court, but we're getting up there. I'm still looking at that million. Okay, so I'm gonna see how the board feels about continuing both of these for clarification of the 2 items Chris just brought up about a different amount from Willoughby as far as fee and lieu offered by the applicant, and on the Shieldo, how the process would work about the Shieldo Tridow, is that what it is? Selling the property at the ABC with a covenant and deed restriction that would move forward on that property. So those are 2 separate applications with information I think is specific to bring back to the board at a continued hearing. Leslie?
Do we need, this is not a public hearing.
Right.
I think last time we did continue to a date certain.
Okay. I will tell you that our board meeting on April 13th is short-term rentals.
No one wants to be on that.
What
are you talking about? We got that all hammered out. We're like,
You know what? It didn't take Chris long to shake his head, no way. So I would be looking at the regular meeting on, it would be the 27th.
April 27th?
Yes.
We have another land use item on that agenda, but
What is that,
it's
Dan?
final subdivision approval for the Oxenberg subdivision,
Oh.
GMQS.
Yeah. That's just a follow-up on
Yeah,
everything else.
it's
Yeah.
follow-up.
I think we should be okay,
Okay.
unless we move short-term rentals again, and then we'll have to think about what we're doing.
Does April 27th?
April 27th, yeah, that works.
Okay. So, Kelly, you have anything else you want to say?
I was just, it prodded me to talk to Cindy about short-term rentals. And
Oh,
that there's a
okay.
meeting that our new staff, Jeanette, might want to sit in on.
Okay.
So, that's all.
So, Steve, please.
So Chris has been very creative up to this point, and with this, our discussion today and time for you to digest it and take it to your clients, I think we should continue it and, see what happens, see what, you might come up with something that hasn't been thought of yet, perhaps, so I feel good about continuing both of them at this point.
Well, and I think Chris appreciates coming before the Board of Commissioners, because I think we have a lot more humor than other boards you might. So I'm going to ask for a motion to continue the Tridow Real Estate LTD request to eliminate an EDU at Shieldo Road, and I want to continue that until our regular meeting on April the, what did I say, 27th?
27th.
So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Now I'm seeking a motion to continue the application on Willoughby Way, applicant for a request to eliminate the ADU deed restriction. We're going to continue that meeting also until our regular meeting on April the 27th. Do I have a motion? I have a motion?
Second?
Second. Any further comment? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Kelly said aye. We're going to continue? Okay. All right. All right, Chris, thank you. We'll
right,
see you on the
thank
27th. And hopefully we'll keep that agenda as humorous as we did today. Thank you. It was actually a very serious discussion, and Chris, we do appreciate you bringing your creative ideas. No, it gives us great food for thought, and I think we appreciate it. Actually, I know we appreciate it. All right, So we are moving towards, oh, thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Towards open discussion. Thank you, Cindy. Are you here for open discussion? Just to enjoy our. So
Can I
we
grab
have
you after?
before us, and I see we have David Johnson from RAFTA, but we have before us a letter to the Honorable Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation supporting a grant for multimodal options for a vibrant, equitable move, Western Slope proposal for U.S. Department of Transportation raise grant funding. It's a very clean, well-written letter. I have it before me if the board wants to. I showed it to Steve earlier.
Rich emailed it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Rich had emailed this letter out to all of you. I'm not sure everyone had a chance to see it. It was, I think, late morning that it went out. But Patty, if you don't mind, I would invite Dave to maybe explain the request for federal grants and the letter of support that's
Okay,
being
because
requested.
I think, Dave, thank you for joining us and waiting, because I think Steve is really curious as to exactly where these monies, which bus stop station these
Well-
improvements would be going in on.
Yeah, my question was, is it going to be by the terminus where the Mustang bus goes now in West Glenwood, or is it going to be moved over by the old mall, which has a huge parking lot and would be a great parking lot for a bus terminal kind of place?
Steve, this terminus or this multimodal transit hub would be located at the West Glenwood Springs Park and Ride. So we would upgrade that current park and ride.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just for a bit of explanation, first of all, thank you for the very short notice in looking at this. We were invited by CDOT to be a partner in this RAISE grant proposal. RAISE is one of a few grant programs available for transit and other transportation infrastructure. And Shoshana Liu of CDOT is actually leading this effort. RAFT is a partner, and the idea is to develop 3 multimodal transit hubs on the I-70 corridor to support more Mustang service. One would be in Grand Junction, one would be in Rifle, and one would be at the West Glenwood Park and Ride. And we were very happy to be a partner in this, because not only do we support more Mustang service at the West Glenwood Park and Ride, but it would be an opportunity for us to really improve this and make it kind of the Ruby Park of the other end of the BRT system. And extend more BRT service to West Glenwood.
Great, Dave, thank you
And
for.
that's the basic gist of the proposal.
Yeah, thank you for further clarification. I believe that whenever we have an opportunity to apply for a grant, we should. And whenever we have the opportunity to support others in applying for grants, we should also do that. So I'm going to see how the board feels. If the board is comfortable with me signing this letter, I can do so today. We can get it back to you. Yeah, I'm seeing.
Patty. Yeah.
Yep, sign it.
Yeah, sign
Okay.
it.
Dave, that was really difficult. Anything else, Steve?
Here, you can
Thank you
borrow
very
my
much.
pen.
Steve is handing me a pen, but I really need to do it on letterhead and do it appropriately, so I think Rich is still in the office. So thank you. Anything else you can share with us today, Dave, now that we have you?
Let's see, we did receive a 5339 grant to further develop, to further renovate and expand our maintenance facility in West Glenwood Springs. That's where the Park and Ride is roughly located. That will allow us to provide more and more BRT service throughout the region and basically provide us the capabilities to maintain a modern zero-emission bus fleet. We think that that's the direction that everything is going. And
Great. And what is RAFTA's involvement with the 27th Street pedestrian safety and traffic signal safety? And I don't know, I'm not clear as to how involved RAFTA is in that intersection.
Well, very involved, because we, and also thanks to your letters of support, we we have garnered some funds and also dedicated Destination 2040 funds as we committed to developing a grade separated pedestrian crossing at 27th Street. It would cross both State Highway 82 and 27th Street to ensure that we can get bicycles and pedestrians across 82 without having to cross that grade anymore.
Because I've crossed that intersection a lot, and it's pretty scary, because people are coming and going and nobody's watching and on either side, in either scope. So thank you, I appreciate that. That'll be a big improvement through there. Thank you, Dave. All right, thank you, and I'll get that letter off to you hopefully this afternoon.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, John Peacock, open discussion.
Yeah, just one more thing. To make the board aware, there's been some early planning underway to potentially provide a library station at the Snowmass Village Rec Center. And so the library has been working with the town on those early discussions to consider the possibility. And so there is going to be some public outreach sessions happening in Snowmass Village on April 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. They're still working through the locations and time to gauge the community's interest in seeing that kind of library station there. And you know, that may result in a proposal coming back through Snowmass and the library.
Kind of like
So-
a drop-off, pick-off for orders and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the scope is yet to be determined. I know in other communities there is like almost a branch library that is associated with rec centers, and it just brings a more diverse group of folks together in a community center. And so it may be something along those lines. Right now, we do have drop-off pickup at the rec center. So I think this would probably be
Expansion
something
of
more
that.
substantial. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for letting us know about that. That would be
And
great.
that's all I've got for
I
you.
think this board's very supportive of anything that expands opportunities for libraries, so. All right, board, does the board have any, Steve?
Well, just feedback on that. I like the concept. I mean, it's a rec center now. Making it more of a community center by expanding it, I think that would be a good direction to go, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one thing, since I do have John Ely here and John Peacock. Next week's agenda on Tuesday, just need to touch base with Charlotte as far as executive session items. We have that starting at 10. We're not having our agenda meeting tomorrow. And so anything else for clarification, it's a very light agenda. We have some time, John, if there's any items you want to bring forward.
I'm not going to be here. I guess
know.
I should have mentioned that.
I know you're not going to be here, but is there any
discussion,
members
yeah.
of staff who are going to be here who might want to bring, because we have some time slots we might be able to
Okay.
fill. You'll be back, right?
I
On
come
next
back
Tuesday?
Monday.
Okay. So we just need to tighten that up and
I do have some kids off on spring break. One child off on spring break.
bring that child with us, with you, with the puppy.
Yeah.
We're welcoming one and all into our building these days. Greg, did you have any open discussion? Okay. So I think we're good. Thank you, guys. You did an amazing job again. I appreciate everyone participating. Let's wish Francie a safe vacation and return. So I do need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and I have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Grassroots, Amy, thank you. Skylar, thank you.
Amy, you get to take the afternoon off now.
Yeah, our technology worked well today. I appreciate it. Thank you.